And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another pair of rounds in the UK Sim Racing community's Porsche Cup Season 6, as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing. And today marks rounds 10 and 11 out of the 15, as we continue to answer the question of who is the master or mistress in the Porsche 992 Cup car. And indeed, with the round starting to run low as we make our way through the second half of the season, and after a thrilling race, the extended special endurance race at Le Mans last week, the tables are turning, the championships are intensifying, and it's all going to come down to critical points at critical junctures. And indeed, our host circuit for today, Silverstone, may just play a pivotal part in proving as to who could be our potential championship candidates. But as we get ready to go racing, of course, our host venue is in the United Kingdom. It is the home of British motor racing. It needs no introduction, and to give one, well, it's going to be underwhelming, but we'll do our best. It is the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit. Host to racing in the United Kingdom, indeed for both domestic and international series for the best part of over 50 years. This is a circuit like no other when it comes to average lap speed. Hosting one of the highest average lap speeds in the United Kingdom, albeit Thruxton holding a slightly higher accolade, but a much shorter circuit by comparison. This circuit is a wide multitude of medium and high speed apex corners, and indeed extended straightaways to connect them together. And what it does mean around here, it is the home of downforce, while drivers were looking to carry as much speed from corner to corner and return to full throttle as soon as possible in their hunt for the top end speed, and therefore the opportunity to go on the fight into the next corner, alternatively break away from the pack. Get it right and they'll find themselves taking victory. Get it wrong, however, they may find themselves going wide onto the grass or the run affairs, alternatively prone to a battle into the next corner. And with the road surface around here being extremely wide and flat due to the fact this circuit is based on the original location of Royal Air Force Base dated back to the Second World War, with 3 runways being converted gradually into the circuit that you know and love today, it means that overtaking opportunities here are going to be plentiful, and we can expect plenty of action from corner to corner and race to race. But as we get ready to go racing, you're tuning live by the official UKSimRacing YouTube channel. And if you go to youtube.com and search for UKSR or UKSimRacing, you can tune in there. And also on top of that, do remember to give us a like and subscribe to the channel if you've been following the content for some time, because of course it means that you can stay up to date of all the latest broadcasts, including of course today's. But as we get ready to go racing as well, in the commentary booth you have myself, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britney Spit, depending on what media you follow me on, and I will bring you all your racing action over the course of this round and indeed the remaining rounds of the season. And what a season it has been thus far. For as we take a look at our calendar, we can see that as we continue to make our way further down, we enter an interesting zone within the calendar. We started off of course all the way back on the 23rd of March at the Virginia International Raceway, or VIR as it's known in short, for rounds 1 and 2. There in the United States of America, the state of Virginia, we saw the championship campaigns in both the gold and silver driver classes, and the teams championship get off to a rocketing start. And the biggest question there, of course, in the silver class in particular, who wanted to win the feature race, with all of our major contenders in that race falling by the wayside, but in the end one of them had to take victory. Then winding forward a week later to the 30th of March, we made our way to Italy for the classic Monza Grand Prix circuit, and in rounds 3 and 4 we saw plenty of battling into turn 1 on lap 1 of both races, but we also saw our drivers put up an absolutely superb show, and indeed making sure that Monza did not catch them out. Wind on a week further from that, on the 6th of April we commenced a Belgian doubleheader, starting with rounds 5 and 6, everybody's second favourite Belgian circuit, now Circuit Zolder, the home of DTM, and there with the chicanes and the higher curves, we saw many a driver come a cropper, particularly in the first chicane, but also some brilliant battling into the latter chicanes. And will that set the tone for the run into everybody's favourite Belgian circuit in rounds 7 and 8 back on the 13th of April, and that was of course the circuit de Spa-Francorchamps. But then we had our first break week, and there, whilst everyone was given the opportunity to cool and calm down, when they returned last week for round number 9 in France, we had the single round special endurance round at Le Mans, returning for this season, of course hosted back in season 4, albeit that was at the Nürburgring at Nordschleife, and we saw at Le Mans all of our drivers absolutely give it their all and need some spectacular performances, but perhaps the most notable one out front, running away from proceedings in the gold class, Philipp Hammer from Team Germany really dominating the race on the 27th of April. We're rounds 10 and 11 today at Silverstone on the 4th of May. You can see after today we're having another break week in line of course with the official iRacing event. It's the 24 hours at Nürburgring this weekend, so we're getting all our drivers a break in order to be able to recover from that before they return for rounds 12 and 13 in Japan at Suzuka on the 18th of May. And well, with that, the penultimate round being hosted in Japan, and Suzuka being a circuit that puts to the test every aspect of the machine. Indeed, it's Honda's official test circuit, and that's why it's so highly regarded. Indeed, a feature to most sporting calendars. It is going to be one not to miss, but we make our way into the season finale, our last two rounds, which will be back in France at the Circuit de Nevers Magny-Cours, rounds 14 and 15 on the 25th of May. And well, how will it all end there? We're still quite aware of the story to go, and as we come into tonight, let's give you a recap of the championship standings thus far. We start off, of course, with the Gold Championship in the Drivers' Championship, and we can see here Philipp Hammer leads the way now on 135 points for Team Germany, with what is a 19-point advantage over Haroldas Jotautas. The over-limit racing driver finding his way into P2 ahead of Alex Peregrina, and well, the contrasting fortunes could not be starker. Hammer finally finding that pace he needs in order to really start to assert dominance on this championship, which we saw back in Season 5 after a difficult start to the season, and finally coming through at Le Mans. Jotautas continue to show that great consistency across the racing at Le Mans, and that's why he's in P2. But meanwhile, championship leader going into that round but falling to P3 with an early incident of one of the Mulsanne chicanes. Alex Peregrina for Avatar the race now dropping into P3, only 2 points further afield, but you can imagine he'll be looking to bounce back immediately tonight and particularly take the fight to Hammer and prove the point that this is his championship, not Hammer's. But keep an eye out for Jotautas, of course, finding himself in the middle there, and one to always watch out for. In P points, Hekel Gustav from Ignium Motorsport on 93 points, equal with Cameron Willesey for Willesey Racing, and the battle for P4 and the right to charge after the top three is coming between the two of them, and it's fascinating to see with Ryan Walker for Satellite Racing in P6 on 50 points. Well, great performance at Le Mans. It means he started to break his way clear of the rest of the field, but finds himself in a no man's land where he's trying to get closer to the top five but leave the rest of the field behind. But to be fair, where Walker had a brilliant performance, the same could be said of Giles Phillips, bringing on home what was a P3 on the podium at Le Mans for Phillips GP, and what you can imagine on 35 points right now, he'll feel galvanised to hunt down Ryan Walker today. Emil Koopmans from Apex Blisters in P8 of 32 points, also nipping at the heels of the Phillips GP driver, with Samuel Case Brown for Blackout Motorsport New Zealand P9, ahead of Ricardo Jimenez for Avatar the Racing, who completes the top 10. Albeit Corey Lazarus, the other Blackout Motorsport New Zealand team driver, there in P11, only outside the top 10 based on result count, back on 17 points, and looking to re-emerge into the top 10 today, with Chris Cole for DC Sim Racing, Alexander Wilfert for Team Germany, Lee Holmes at ATEC Racing Team Purple, and Joe Newman for Empire Motorsport completing your top 15, and then P16 on 2 points there, last but not least, Rob Zelby for Shell V-Power Race Team. As we then come to our Silver Championship standings, here the complexion is a bit different with regards to the top three. We can see our top two of Roxanne Marshall for 24-hour Bunty People and Derek Bigadite for DC Sim Racing are equal on points, but it's Marshall who's ahead based on result countback. In P3, Luke Andrews there, only a further 4 points off, and therefore the FR20 Sim Racing Purple driver, after an absolute masterclass drive at Le Mans within the Silver class, picking up the win by quite a considerable margin. It's Andrews who has the momentum behind him. Bigadite as well continue to find great form as the season has progressed, and Marshall right now trying to right a decline in form, and will all three drivers be vying for the win in Class A in both races, you can be certain of that. Lewis Willesey meanwhile and Jack Ward there, they're close together in the battle for P4, with the latter from Willesey Racing of Ward on 77 points, two clear of Lewis Willesey for Tresla Motorsport, and then we do have a 20-point gap to Alistair Hatcher for ATEC Tech Racing Team Sign in P6, who leads the rest of the field in the pursuit of the top 5. Wayne Bassett for FR20 Sim Racing on 52 points, ahead of Steve Hobbs' teammate by a considerable margin now, with then Sean Cranny's for HW Racing equal on points to Hobbs, but behind based on result count back in P9, and it's Aaron Trester who completes the top 10 for Tresla Motorsport, only 2 further afield. 1 point off him in P11, best of the rest for Clicks Racing, Sean Dobie, with Glenn Humberstone for ATEC Tech Racing Team Purple in P12, and you can see that the battle to be inside the top 10 really intensifying, already the battle for P8 upwards started to grow, and then outside of the top 12, Craig Tillerston in P13 for FR20 Sim Racing, 1 point clear Craig Shield for ATEC Tech Racing Team Zion, with Night and Day Racing Steve Kershaw completing the top 15. Liam Whittingham in P16 for Shell V-Power Race Team, looking to find a stronger performance today, with what is Jason Mumford the privateer P17, head of Joe Pinner for Ignium Motorsports, and then we do have Jack Isherwood just behind based on result count back in P19, the privateer, head of Chris Edison for UKSimRacing, who completes the top 20, and then P21 last but not least on a single point, Tony Bradley. As we come from our standings to the Drivers' Championship standings to the team standings, we can see here the complexion where Team Germany leads the way on 143 points and is starting to inch away from Avatar Racing. Albeit both teams' fortunes have had their ups and they've had their downs, but will one team be able to stamp their foot down and say, right, it's positives from here on? Over Limit Racing as well, only 10 points off of the top two. They find themselves continuing the hunt, as do Willesee Racing in P4, and then there's a gap now extending to 62 points to Satellite Racing in P5, who really brings up the rest of the field and has all the other teams contending for that P5 spot. We have Blackout Motorsport New Zealand 2 points clear of FR20 SimRacing Purple in the hunt for P6, with Phillips GP at third point behind in P8, and then DC SimRacing 24-hour Punty People complete the top 10, with Best of the Rest, they're 3 points off of the top 10 810 Racing Team Purple, and then Tresla Motorsport and HW Racing and also FR20 Sim Racing, all three teams on 9 points, and there's a result count back that puts them in that order from P12 to P14, where 810 Racing Team signed P15, and then we do have Night and Day Racing and Clicks Racing, only separated based on result count back P16 and P17, with Empire Motorsport P18, Shell V-Powered Race Team and Ignition Motorsport complete the top 20, and on -3 points, UKSimRacing now in P21 due to penalties picked up earlier in the season. But coming from our standings in, let's go to our circuit for today, and it's none other as introduced earlier than the Silverstone Circuit Grand Prix layout, as located near the town of Silverstone in Northamptonshire of England, the United Kingdom. And well, the circuit map here is provided by iRacing.com. Thank you to them for their wonderful simulator and the circuit maps that come with it. This circuit map is two-dimensional, and you could argue this circuit is relatively two-dimensional as well. There are some small elevation changes in specific points of the lap, but beyond that, this is a very flat road surface, and therefore we'll be seeing our drivers really trying to maximise the run of high downforce on their cars. And well, it's going to be that gambit. The more downforce you take, the less top end speed you have, but the better apex speed you'll carry from corner to corner. Whereas our drivers make their way across the start finish line and up towards Abbey at turn number 1. They'll go through the sweeping right hander, well, coming on through Farm Curve, the left hander that follows, and braking hard down to Village Corner at turn number 3. There they'll make their way out to the right hander before going back onto the brakes for the loop hairpin at turn 4, and then go flat out through Aintree at 5 and power their way down the Wellington Straight. We then head into the combination of Brooklands and Lovefield at turns 6 and 7. Through left into right there, it's all about late apex management. And as they exit Lovefield, trying to get on the power as soon as possible, they'll go for Woodcote Corner at turn number 8, where the old start finish line would be, and head up towards Copse Corner at turn number 9. A tricky corner at turn 9 at Copse, given the fact that you want to carry as much speed into the corner, but carry too much speed and you'll find yourself definitely going wide, and also one where overtakes are possible, albeit we have seen in recent years in the world of virtual and also real motorsport what happens when drivers don't give way. And as they make their way on through there, it's then the charge up towards the complex of 10 through to 14. It's Maggots into Beckett's, exiting via Chapel, where it's all about medium speed apexes that gradually reduce in apex speed as they come on through and complete the sequence. But get it right out of Beckett's and you'll find yourself flat out through Chapel and onto the Hangar Straight before heading up towards Stowe Corner, one of the fastest corners on the circuit and the trickiest, because it's all about getting to that apex curve as late as possible to carry the speed through Stowe, down the Vale and into turns 16 and 17, the late chicane, before heading through Club to complete the lap and do it all over again. But as we look to our rules, of course, we have switched back to our sprint and feature round set rules now. And we can see qualifying wise, a lone qualifying format shall be used today, where drivers have 8 minutes to set their best possible time. They all take to an isolated instance of the circuit. And in terms of the races, they shall commence by a standing start, as is the tradition of the Porsche Cup with UKSimRacing. The sprint race grid shall be set based on results of qualifying, whereas the feature race grid shall be a partial reverse grid based on results of the sprint race with the top 8 positions inverted. What that means in layman's terms is that the winner of the sprint race will start P8 on the grid for the feature, and we work our way down through the sprint race finishing order to the P8 driver, who will then start on pole for the feature race, and the 9th place finisher and downwards in the sprint. Well, that's exactly where they start on the grid for the feature. Now, there are no mandatory pit stop requirements in either of the races, so when you see a driver come into the pits, that's due to either damage picked up, of which they have 1 fast repair available, or they have picked up a drive-through penalty for accumulating 14 or more instant points. But that's enough rules and regulation, everything in between. And as we head back to our live pictures, well, here's our schedule for today. Times in British Summer Time, that's BST, or Universal Coordinated Time +1, UTC +1, and we can see in just under 2 minutes time, in fact, just over 2 minutes time, we should say, as we've been corrected, it will be the qualifying session of 8 minutes at 8 o'clock. And then after that, we'll transition to the grid for a kick-off of our first race of the day, the round 10 sprint, 12 minutes in duration at 8:10. After that, we'll take a brief breather before starting to set the grid just before 8:30 this evening, and that'll be in preparation for the round 11 feature race. 2.5 times the duration, with it being 30 minutes instead of 12 from the sprint, and indeed with that duration extension, it also becomes a factor of time management and consistency in between. But as our drivers get set here, most of them now already calming down and indeed prepared to go racing, and it is quite a quiet circuit at this time. Most of our drivers are now putting their final warm-up and practice laps as we look to Håkon Gustad for Ignium Motorsport. The Norwegian making his way across the timeline into turns 1 and 2, and as he does here, will get himself all comfortably set and looking now to see how he can get on in the racing, looking fast in that P4 in this final practice session. Indeed, practice times are never truly indicative of what can occur in the qualifying session. And one man has proven that time and time again, Philipp Hammer. Sometimes it's been a shock and other times it has been a welcome surprise. But the number one driver here from Germany, the Team Germany lead driver, as he makes his way through Woodcourt and up towards Copse Corner at turn at number 9, will be set here and looking to try and go for another win as he gradually brings it to a halt there and gets ready to go into qualifying. Ryan Walker the same here, looking to carry on that momentum from Le Mans last time out, and will definitely feeling buoyant as he's coming more and more to the grips of the car and really only started to acclimatise to the Porsche 992 Cup car as of this season. And as the 95 driver makes his way out of turn 9 and down towards the Maggots into Beckett's complex, well, he's now going to really feel the full pace of the car, the full run around here, because this is one of those circuits where if you're looking for that high speed, you're going to find it. But as he comes out of where's Beckett's there and into Chapel to complete the run of the very tricky sequence of corners, we'd just like to take a brief moment to remind you, ladies and gentlemen, that if you have been a long-time supporter of UKSimRacing, and if you've ever wondered how you could potentially and further support UKSimRacing, did you know there is a way to do so via our affiliates? It's quite a quick way to do so, for UKSimRacing is affiliated with multiple sim racing and real-world motorsport companies, including Swello Meta Sim Racer Coaching, Racingwear and Demon Tweaks. And if you do head to our website, and there's at uksimracing.co.uk today, and the website will appear on screen very shortly, and there it is in its splendour, you'll notice in the top right corner of the screen there is a link to our official Discord. Now there's two reasons why you might want to be part of our Discord. The first one is, if you ever want to compete in any of our official series, you need to be part of our Discord. That is a mandatory requirement. But also, secondly, on our Discord, our affiliates do provide a number of discount codes, particularly some of our affiliates, and well, you can use those discount codes to result in a discounted purchase for you as the consumer. And at UKSimRacing, we get a kickback from your purchase. But because we're a non-profit organisation, that means that every purchase that is made using one of our discounted affiliate codes, that money will be invested back into the community in order to fund future series, including future renditions of the Porsche Cup, the GT3 League, I should say, that's currently ongoing, and we've got plenty more planned for 2023 and onwards. So do remember, a little purchase can go a long way in supporting UKSimRacing. But right now, the one thing that's going to go the longest way today will be a good qualifying lap as qualifying gets underway, and we're just shy of a minute into the 8-minute session, and our drivers all gradually making their way out at the moment. And well, in isolated instances of the circuit, of course, that's what closed qualifying is all about, where they have the circuit to themselves. They're not going to have very long in terms of that time, 8 minutes here, and with a lap time that's just under 2 minutes in length, where you put the mathematics together, and our drivers really will only have 3 flying laps in order to be able to achieve their ambitions. And of course, do keep in mind, we do not have overtime in qualifying. And what that means is, when we see the clock strike 8 minutes, that's the qualifying session over. If a driver's on a lap, that lap is discounted, and their best lap set prior to that is going to be their qualifying lap. So therefore, they've got to hit it hard on the mark immediately in order to be able to get the job done. But as Andresen makes his way there through at turn at number 9 and heading into a Maggots into Beckett's now, we're looking quite fast here. And Tresler was one of the higher silver drivers in the final practice session. But as he comes on through there, trying to get as much tyre temperature and brake temperature as he can currently. Do keep in mind, of course, around here, it does take at least a lap to really start to get the tyre temperature up, ideally 2 laps. And when we do look to the weather conditions here today on the right-hand side of your screen, an ambient of 18 degrees centigrade, and the same for the track right now. It's a relatively cool track, and that is going to factor in with regards to the fact our drivers can push a little bit harder, albeit they do have to be mindful that on cold brakes, when they try to go heavy on the brakes, such as into turn 16, coming out the valve, as Tresler's going to do so, the brakes may have a propensity to lock up early on, and therefore it could be a little bit of a light touch or a bit of a banker lap for the first qualifying lap before they then go into a more aggressive lap number 2. But as he comes on through, meanwhile we do look to with some of our other drivers heading on around, as we look to Haroldas Jotautas heading up towards the right-hander of Stowe here at turn at number 15, as he comes on through. The right-hander will very shortly jump on board with the over-limit racing driver as he takes us around for a flying lap. And more to be fair, Jotautas always does put in a very strong qualifying lap, and we look forward to seeing how he gets on here today as he makes way through turns 16 and 17 here, and heading on out of 17. We jump on board now as he heads around for the lap, going on through Club Corner, and well, dashboard in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen if you want to follow his speed and onto the lap. So So charging up towards turn at number 1, looking to his left-hand side here as he brakes just before the 100-metre board, drops the gear and chucks the car in. Back onto the throttle now as he brings the car into left-hand apex to turn number 2, and then onto the brakes. He'll get set, braking just before the 100-metre board, coming all the way down the gearbox to second gear, and just nursing the car to the apex before powering out and heading up towards turn number 4. Heading through the loop hairpin at this point, clips the apex curve but doesn't hit the red sausage to avoid lifting the car up. And as he comes through the left-hander of turn number 4, in 5 flat out now as he powers his way onto the Wellington straight, named after, of course, the British bomber, the Wellington bomber, as used in the Second World War. And as he makes his way down towards turn number 6, onto the brakes of 100-metre board once again, just gradually easing the car in towards the opening apex. Very late apex now. Bring the car, keep it in the middle of the road, bring it naturally over to the apex of turn number 7. And as he comes on out, get on the throttle as soon as possible. V-shaped apex, straighten the steering wheel, power down, and that's all the way through Woodcourt and up towards Cops he goes. Now gradually accelerating up through the gears, up into 5th gear, very shortly heading into 6th. Well, in fact, he'll stay in 5th this time. And as he goes onto the brakes there, about 120 metres from apex, drops the 4th, sends the car in, and lets the car just gradually glide out, making sure to keep 2 wheels within the white lines, because if I try to put all 4 tyres beyond the white lines, it will be an invalidated lap. And now Maggotts into Beckett's here, lift off nice and early, car down to 4th gear, keep it on the apex, and then bring it into left-hander, stay close to left-hand apex here, as now keeping the car on the left-hand side, and then turning into Beckett's corner at turn number 13, back on the throttle nice and early now, gradually build it up, powering through Chapel, and down the hanger straight he goes, and up towards turn at number 15. Now building up the speed here, Jotautas just gradually bring the car over to the left-hand side to the extremities, braking the 150-metre board, down from 6th into 4th, and as he comes down to 3rd ever so, connects the apex absolutely perfect. They're like connecting the dots as he lets the car roll out and builds up the speed, charging down the valve and into the braking zone for turn 16, braking the 100-metre board, down to 2nd gear, through the left, keeps the car far left as possible before turning to 17, a little bit oversteer there, got a little bit greedy with the steering wheel, and as he comes on through club corner, that's the lap that's going to be complete. A very smooth lap for Jotautas, but what's it going to be in terms of proof in the pudding? Well, it's only going to be a, quite a laid back lap there by comparison. We thought he was pushing it quite hard, but Jotautas now heading on to another lap, and perhaps this will be where he absolutely goes for it. We're making it in towards turn at number 3. Meanwhile, Philipp Hammer heading on round and currently coming out of turn at number 7, and will right now heading up towards at turn at number 9, and currently the fastest man on circuit with 202.378 to his name as he gets set and makes his way up towards the next braking zone. But as he does, meanwhile, in the silver class, it's Jack Ward who's the fastest out there, P3 overall. But we do have some close time startings coming in, but nobody able to match the pace of this man of Hammer. Indeed, Cameron Willesey currently 1.7 seconds, almost 1.8 seconds over the pole sitter, and Hammer absolutely going for it. And you can understand why, given the fact, I think after the performance at Le Mans, now he does not want to let the championship slip out of his grasp again, and will live with limited time available. Indeed, our drivers will not have many more laps in order to be able to set those times as he heads on down. In fact, the lap time being just over 2 minutes, we have to correct ourselves in terms of our statement earlier. It means our drivers will only really have 2 laps available to them in qualifying, and well, that is going to be something which is a limiting factor as we see Charles Phillips making his way up towards Stowe Corner now. And as he does in the number 12 machine, yet to get a time on the board. And when you ideally do want to time on the board, overtaking is highly possible here. But of course, you don't want to be starting from the back of the field, because otherwise that's going to compromise you. And Tillotson has not put a lap on the board, is in the pit lane. So for Tillotson, it's all over in terms of qualifying. He'll be starting from the back as a minimum. But as we see Charles Phillips hanging on through the final couple of corners here, what's Phillips going to be able to do as he heads to the line? And well, is it going to be enough here? And it moves in P5 at 203.946. Alex Peregrina, meanwhile, goes P2 on a 202.756, half a second off the Hammer's time. And meanwhile, Roxanne Marshall has taken provisional pole in the silver class on what is there, a 204.12. So Marshall leaving it late, but getting the job done, it would seem, with Hobson Ward in the pit lane. Can anybody else respond? We've got more laps coming in. Jotautas goes P3 after going on a much faster lap compared to the one we rode on board with, but still we've got to see the smooth lines from Jotautas, but they enacted it. And meanwhile, Corey Lazarus here just crossed line P4 on a 203.461. So it's going to be Jotautas and Lazarus on that second row of the grid by looks of things, as meanwhile And Steve Kershaw making his way down the Wellington straight. Well, he's not going to have enough time to finish this lap, so P15 will be the best in terms of his starting position. But Ryan Walker, well, he's going to be late in the day, but if he nails it through 16 and 17, he will get a lap on the board. What's it going to be in terms of time? I don't think this is going to be close to pole, but I think it will be enough to put him up towards what is the upper portion of the field as he crosses the timeline, and it's going to be P4, and it's a 2:03.410, and Walker once again delivering, as meanwhile Cole went out the final corner. He's just going to get this lap in right in. He's P15 currently. He crosses the line, and for Cole, he does not improve. It's Hammer on pole over in the gold class, and it will be Marshall on silver pole in P9. But as they make their way to the grid for our first race of the day, this is how they line up for the round 10 sprint here at Silverstone. Philipp Hammer takes pole position for Team Germany by half a second over Avatar Racing's Alex Peregrina. It's the gold lockout in the front row and the gold pair to follow on the second row of Haroldas Jotautas for Over Limit Racing and Satellite Racing's Ryan Walker. On row number 3, it's Corey Lazarus for Blackout Motorsport New Zealand, who is joined by Ignium Motorsport's Hekon Gestad. On row 4, we have the parent of Ricardo Jimenez for Avatar Racing and Giles Phillips for Phillips GP, with Roxanne Marshall taking your silver pole position for 24-hour Punty People starting P9 and joined on the 5th row of the grid by Cameron Willisey for Willisey Racing. Outside the top 10 on the 6th row, it's Steve Hobbs and Jack Ward, the silver pair for FR20 Sim Racing and Willisey Racing respectively, and they'll be followed up on row number 7 by Alexander Wilfert for Team Germany and DC Sim Racing's David Bigadike. On row number 8, it's DC Sim Racing's Chris Cole behind his teammate, and with him it's Steve Kershaw for Night and Day Racing, followed up by the pairing there of Wayne Basson for FR20 Sim Racing and HW Racing's Sean Cranny Swash. Completing the top 20, it's Tresla Motorsports' Aaron Tresla and FR20 Sim Racing Purple's Luke Andrews with his weakest qualifying session of the season so far. A bit of a surprise there given his performance at Le Mans. Lewis Willisey starts P21 for Tresla Motorsport, joined on Wednesday 11th row of the grid there by Joe Pinder for Ignium Motorsports, and then we have Sean Doby for Clicks Racing and Craig Shield line up side by side on row number 12, followed up by the parent of what will be Alistair Hatcher for ATEC Racing Team Cyan and FR20 Sim Racing's Craig Silverstone, who start P25 and P26. Well, it's going to be 26 drivers who take to the grid, and very shortly we'll see all 26 machines roar their way into turn number 1, but the question of course will be, can Philipp Hammer get the lead in his hands, or will it be Peregrina who gets the jump? Well, here come the lights. And it's lights out and away we go. It's a quick start and they charge their way down towards turn number 1. And Hammer gets the better start by comparison as Peregrina meanwhile has a slow start. And as they make their way into the opening corner, will they all survive turn 1 it would seem. But as they come in towards turn number 2, this is where things will start to get dicey. Lazarus making a great start as well, defending versus Walker there. As Walker looking in, and meanwhile Hekon Gestad makes it 3 wide on the braking. And Gestad goes all in immediately, seizing the inside. But now finds himself on the outside through the loop as they come on through. It's going to be slow on the apex as Joel Phillips tries to put some pressure on. Meanwhile, Roxanne Marshall on a bit of a slow run out of the corner, but looking back up towards Corey Lazarus versus Gestad versus what is there, Ryan Walker 3 wide coming on through turn number 5, but Lazarus gets the better run off the left-hander as they power the way on down. It's going to be 3 wide once again with Walker, Gestad and Phillips, but meanwhile Phillips backs out, Walker also backs out and Gestad comes in hot. Lazarus holds the outside to inside, and as they buckle their way under the braking into turn number 7, Lazarus defends hard here, and this is going to cause the top 3 to run away very quickly as already P4 to P3 is separated by almost 2.5 seconds. In fact, it's almost 3 seconds now as they make their way through Woodcock Corner. It's a fascinating start, and as they make their way up towards turn number 9 at Cox, you can see here, look at Karen Willisey looking on the inside. Giles Phillips comes him off and looks for the move in return. Onwards Ryan Walker as they come on through the right-hander and down towards Maggots into Beckett's they go. Meanwhile, further down the field, I can tell you that Steve Hobbs has started to fall down the order like a stone. Has been the instant for Steve Hobbs, and meanwhile, as they make their way into Maggots into Beckett's, Jack Ward is now your silver class leader after a slow start for Roxanne Marshall coming out the loop in particular and compromising the line completely. But Ward now for Willisey Racing under pressure from David Bigadike. We've seen some great starts and also we've seen some difficult ones, but now everything's starting to settle down into some sort of rhythm as meanwhile Steve Hobbs still out of sorts there further in the background of the picture, and Sean Cranny Swash for HW Racing battling with Luke Andrews, and Andrews, he may have had a poor qualifying position, but he's not let that fail him in terms of the fact he's had a great start by comparison as they make the way into the right-hander at turn number 15 at Stowe. But coming on down there, Andrews a little bit of oversteer, and meanwhile got a car around in the wheel of the picture, and I believe, unless I'm very much mistaken, that's Alexander Wilfer who's turned around as he tries to get the car restored there. He does on the grass, but as they make the way towards the end of lap number 1, meanwhile going into lap number 2, it's Philipp Hammer who leads ahead of Alex Peregrina P2, Haroldas Jotautas P3, Corey Lazarus P4, ahead of Gustave, followed by Walker and Phillips and Jimenez, and then Jimenez in at P8. He's battling there with Karen Willesey looking up the inside for P8. The two gold drivers, they're going toe to toe with the silver leader of Jack Wood behind him, who completes the top 10. Best of rest, it's Roxanne Marshall in P11, but onto the brakes. Wood looking on the inside. Jimenez, he comes in way too hot. Contact between the two of them, and with that and the lock up and the braking, Jimenez's race now be quantified in terms of how quickly he can get himself back up to speed. But meanwhile, Ward there with a major mistake. Sean Cranny-Swash has got ahead of Marshall into turn number 3, and Marshall going slow. I think Marshall's got a problem with the car. Marshall is struggling. That car is coming to a standstill, and I think for the 24-hour Bunty People driver, this is early drama in the race. It's going so very wrong. As meanwhile going on around, my good lord, that's Steve Hobbs who's lost there at turn number 5. Ward gets it wrong. Marshall's got a problem, and well, now we've had two major contenders in the Silver Class Championship fall by the wayside, as others are still battling, including Luke Andrews as he makes his way through turn number 7, but he powers his way on round. We do try and get the circuit map in the top right corner of your screen, and there it is. It was shy, but it's made its way back. We've taken it out of hibernation as Andrews here chases after Bigadai. Well, now the battle is on between these two, and really this is the championship lead at the end of this race. But as they come on through Cops Corner, it's Bigadai who holds authority, and Sean Cranny-Swash finds himself leading the Silver Class for the first time this season. As they come on through, Maggots into Beckett's once again. You can see now as the field starts to break open how everybody calming down at Cantor, and well, it's now all going to be about just managing this race as they head in towards the third lap gradually. Well, the problem also will be here is you haven't got very long with 12 minutes plus also the final lap. When we do see the clock strike 12, it means we do have on average what will be a grand total of 6 laps of racing here in the sprint, and 6 laps is not long. You need to make progress. If you haven't made it in the opening 3 laps, then you're going to find yourself stuck and relegated to battling those around you and not looking forward anymore. There's Chris Cole here trying to make a recovery in terms of looking on around afterwards. A difficult qualifying session, can't quite find the move there initially. Where's Aaron Tressler? Meanwhile, behind Wayne Basson up the inside of Steve Kershaw, and with the number 9 driver there for FR20 Sim Racing making the move count, as Kershaw now starting to become a little bit of a cork in the bottle as he makes his way out to Club Corner onto another lap. You see them mounted the curve. Hatcher's going wide. That is, I believe, Craig Shield who's taking a bit of an adventurous approach, but that's not Shield, that's Lewis Willesey. We should correct ourselves. They made the way to turn number 1 once again and charge on through the 9-day racing driver here doing everything in his power to break away. And you can see the 88 Tech racing pair of Hatcher and Shield staying together. The two Cyan teammates battling one another here, and we do know they love to battle in amongst the team as well as others on circuit, and Kershaw just able to keep his cool and not worry too much about what's behind. But as they make their way out to turn 4 and up towards 5 and onto the Wellington straight they go, we can confirm to you that Roxanne Marshall has been able to get back up to speed. Whatever the issue on the car was, it has cost her very dear, or it's been rectified, and perhaps there could be a sign of a resurgence in the second race of the day. But for Marshall down in P21, P11 in the Silver Class, it's not where she wants to be. But as we look from Steve Kershaw trying to hold off Basson, trying to hold off Hatch and chasing after Basson, and Wayne Basson actually being caught up here. Meanwhile, we do look from them to Brian Walker in the battle for P6 in the Gold Class, and over on the satellite racing driver once again finds himself under pressure, this time from Charles Phillips, after doing a great job fend off the charge of the drivers around him in the opening stage of this race. Well, things have calmed down with Heckle Gustave finally breaking clear, and now the Scotsman has the Phillips GP driver all over the back of him as they come out of Beckett's and onto Chapel and making their way down the hanger straight. But meanwhile, looking from them, we look to the two leaders, and Will Hammer had a great start, but now Alex Peregrina has closed up, and well, these are the two championship rivals as we see that Hammer trying to squeeze Peregrina onto the apex at turn number 15. But as they make their way out to Star and down the Vale, well, Hammer's still defending here, where you can feel the intensity between these two right now. Hammer does not want to let this go, given the fact that Peregrina was allowed to run riot with the early stage of the championship, and Hammer's doing as much as possible to give him the bare minimum room on turn 17. Through Club they go into the halfway point of this race. 3 more laps to go based on the time available, 6 minutes if you convert that into a number, and as they make their way into towards turn number 1, Hammer leads, but for how long will it be before he finds himself being pressured once again? That'll be the challenge as they make their way through turn 2, down into 3, onto the brakes, and well, Jotautas only 9 tenths back and trying to get into this fight as well, and I think Jotautas could start to play a bigger factor here if these two start to squander even more time. And indeed, every time you battle, every corner you fight at Silverstone, you will be taking at least half a second out of your lap in order to be able to hold that defensive position. Meanwhile, further back, Luke Andrews battling side by side with Sean Cranny-Swash, the leader of the Silver Class, and this in the run through the loop on towards what is the Wellington straight they go. It's going to be Cranny-Swash who takes a little bit of grass with him as he makes way to the straightaway, cuts back in there as Andrews takes the lead. And well, Sean Cradley Swash in the end with a small mistake, cost him dear. Andrews now, after a difficult qualifying session, with all that's in the past, as they make their way through turn 6 and 7, he holds the authority to the racing line. Meanwhile, Lewis Willisey trying to look up the inside of Craig Schill into turn number 6 as well. Onto the brakes he goes, and the Treasure Motorsport trying now knows he's got to do round the outside at turn 7. Coming through left field bend, it's too wide on Apex, but who's going to be the one who's brave enough to put the power down first? Well, it will be Schill there. He's got the inside line, he's got more room to play with, albeit Willisey finding himself being given just enough room to survive. As they come through turn 8 at Woodcote and up towards Cops Bend. Well, great respectful racing between the two of them, but in the end Craig Schill does stretch ahead as they come on through turn number 9 and onwards towards 10 through to 14. But as they exit, meanwhile, we look making their way down the Hanger Straight, I should say. It's Hammer defending versus Peregrina. Peregrina on the outside this time. Well, Hammer defended hard on the inside previously, but Peregrina's got the overspeed. But on the brakes here, Hammer will have the authority to really make sure that Peregrina fills the width of the circuit. And as they come on out, it's still too wide, but Peregrina's got enough speed here to hold on. They head down towards it's turn number 16, and it is Alex Peregrina who's taken the lead of this race. Hammer did everything he could, but wasn't able to hold the position. But now with 2 more to go in terms of laps, can Hammer come on back? Given the fact he'll have the tow, and that's going to be beneficial down the straights, but in return in the corners that may just take off the leading edge of the turning capabilities of the car, given the fact it will invoke some understeer. Haroldas Jotautas meanwhile still a second behind the leaders, not really gaining, not really losing. Meanwhile, Corey Lazarus, fastest man on circuit, a 2:02.983, fastest lap of the race previous time around, and now closing in earnest versus Jotautas. Well, it looks like the New Zealander may have an advantage that he's going to try and play on the Lithuanian come the final lap, as they make their way out to turn 4 and up towards 5 and on to the first straight they go. Hekon Gestad also following here, finds himself in a bit of a no man's land for Ignition Motorsports P5 and lonely in P5, as we see there in the foreground, in the background I should say. Peregrina doing a bit of weaving down the Wellington straight, doesn't really need to do it this time given the advantage he's got, but such is what it means to him. And meanwhile, back in the silver class, Luke Andrews for FR20 Sim Racing Purple is breaking away from Sean Cranley Swash, and Cranley Swash now finding himself further back. Meanwhile, Giles Phillips here battling side by side with Cameron Willisey, and this is a P7 I believe. It is Willisey trying to make the move. He dived to the inside into turn 6. We're catching the tail end of it, and Phillips defending hard here as they make the way out, and we ride on board with the number 43 driver from Scotland, Willisey Racing, as he makes his way up towards Cops Bend. And what can he do with this? I think for him, it's not about this corner in particular, it's about getting a good run out of here and trying to push the pressure through Magazine to Beckett's, but there, finding himself caught up behind as they make the way down towards turn number 14. We're in the charge here, in the left, right, left they go, and was we briefly lose Cameron Willisey there. Hopefully that's not a sign of something to come in terms of internet connectivity, which of course will be the equivalent of an engine blower in real world motorsport. And as they come back down from 13 to 14, also Ryan Walker not feeling safe given the fact he's only got 7.5 tenths in front, and will in the run through the corners he's lost a whole tenth coming out of Chapel, and that's going to cost him ever more as they make the way up towards Stowe. But still there's not long left in this race, and with that in mind it does mean that it's going to come down to the crunch moments on that final lap, and well, with the field started to calm down outside the top 10, it's the battles inside the top 10 that will be the focus to the end of the race. As meanwhile, we look to our race leader, Alex Peregrina, and he makes his way on to the final lap for Avatar the Racer. They go to lap 6 and 6, given the time available, and as they head up towards turn number 1, well, it's going to be a personal best for Peregrina. Meanwhile, Corey Lazarus sets another fastest lap of the race. This man right now for Black Oak Motorsport New Zealand is absolutely flying high, and whilst his door number's at 4, which represents also where he's currently placed in the field, there's a lock up there, and it is Philipp Hammer who's gone overly deep. Jotautas looks around the outside of the loop hairpin. Corey Lazarus is going to get involved as well, and this is going to be late drama in the battle for P2. Jotautas will want this, he'll want to get an advantage on Hammer, and as they make the way down the Wellington straight, which is going to be side by side between the two rivals, as you can see Lazarus getting close, and Lazarus absolutely flying off the corner. 3 wide under brake and they go. Jotautas round the outside, Lazarus looks up the inside. Hammer defends this here, or is he, as he looks to outside to inside coming into Luffield Bend. Lazarus there made to go deep, he looks at the cut back here, he's going to take a nice early apex and try and get all the power down, but Hammer tries to hold him in place, and meanwhile Lazarus loses the rear end. A little bit of oversteer just sneaks in, and that's the bump in the road as you make your way through Luffield. You can feel it in these cars given their low ride height, and it just upsets the rear of the car, but it's not quite over yet with Jotautas now having to try and hold off Hammer all the way to the end of the race. Well, Alex Peregrina by comparison has got 2.5 seconds to play with. He's absolutely fine, he does that away, he just needs to keep it calm. But Jotautas meanwhile, he can't think he's fine given the fact that right now he's got championship leader Hammer right behind him, and this is pivotal in order to give himself an opportunity to creep right back into the hunt. But as they make the way over, Where's Maggots into Beckett's and then Chapel coming on now. Jotautas gets the better run and Hammer gets a poor run out of Chapel, and that means now the gap will stand at half a second, and I think that may be it in this battle. But meanwhile, Giles Phillips still trying to chase after Ryan Walker. Cameron Willesee falling further back, and will Walker only 2/10 clear as they make their way under the gantry board. And I think now for Phillips it's all about, can he get a good run through Stowe to get the job done, or will that be it? Because of course it will be all these drivers involved in what will be that partial reverse grid. Boy, look from them to your race leader, and as he makes his way through the final corner, it was disaster at Le Mans, but he's immediately bounced back. For Avatar Races, Alex Peregrina takes the win in round 10 of the Porsche Cup, ahead of Haroldas Jotautas and Philipp Hammer P3 in a close battle to the end, with Corey Lazarus P4, Hackle Gustave P5, and there'll be Ryan Walker across the line P6 ahead of Phillips, with Karen Willesee at P8, and he will be your reverse pole position for what is the round 11 feature coming up shortly. Ricardo Jimenez P9, Luke Andrews comes on through, and it will be for the FR20 SimRacing Purple driver another win in the books, ahead of Sean Cranley-Swash and David Biggedite, who complete your silver podium P10 through to P12. Chris Cohen and Trester P13, P14, ahead of Wayne Basson with Lewis Willesee at P16, Craig Shield P17, Alexander Wilford P18 ahead of Roxanne Marshall, and then Steve Kershaw P20 ahead of Craig Tillerston with Alistair Hatcher P22, Sean Dobie at P23, and we didn't quite catch them all as they cross the finish line, ladies and gentlemen, but we can quickly run you through the finishing order of that first race of the day. Whilst we do have a 2-minute break after 12 minutes of racing, Alex Peregrina taking the win in round number 10 here at Silverstone today for Avatar Racing, ahead of Over Limit Races Haroldas Jotautas with Team Germany's Philipp Hammer P3, but nothing between the trio in the end apart from brief mistakes from Hammer, which was the separation. Corey Lazarus P4 there, the Blackout Motorsport New Zealand driver, absolutely charging in the latter half of the race. We expect plenty more from him in race number 2 of the day, with Hekon Gustad P5 there for Ignium Motorsport, and in Satellite Races Ryan Walker P6, holding off the Phillips GP driver of Giles Phillips, and then Willesee Races Karen Willesee just following behind P8. He'll take reverse grid pole with Ricardo Jimenez just missed out P9 for Avatar Racing, and then Luke Andrews P10 silver winner for FR20 SimRacing Purple. Best of rest Sean Cranley-Swash there for HW Racing and his best performance of the season thus far, and Darren Biggedite P3 then the silver class P12 overall for DC Sim Racing. Rest of the field as follows: the teammate for Biggedite of Chris Cole at P13 with Tresla Motorsports Aaron Tresla P14, header of Wayne at Basson, and then Lewis Willesee at Craig Shield, Alexander Wilford. And further on down was Roxanne Marshall and Steve Kershaw completing your top 20 finishers. Craig Tillerston P21 ahead of Alistair Hatcher, with Sean Dobie, Joe Pinder and Jack Ward ahead of Steve Hobbs. The two retirements of Jack Ward and Steve Hobbs there, one what was 4 laps of finish and the other 5 laps of the finish. So 24 finishers in a race of 26 starters, and we'll very shortly will be starting the preparations for the grid for the second race of the day, ladies and gentlemen. But what a thriller race number 1 has been, and as we get set to go once again very shortly, we can see here Haroldas Jotautas just getting himself set and making his way on around circuit currently, and more in his mind, I think now all he'll be thinking about is what does he need to do in the second race of the day to stay one step ahead of Hammer. And the key thing for him will be is he just needs to keep his cool and carry on, but also a good launch will bode well given the fact he will be starting behind Hammer on that grid. The checker flag is out, ladies and gentlemen, on this warm-up session, and we get ready to go racing once more. But as our drivers make the way to the grid for the second race of the day, this is how they'll line up. It's Karen Willesee who starts on pole position, reverse grid pole for the Willesee Racing driver, joined by Phillips GP's Giles Phillips on the front row. Ryan Walker for Satellite Racing and Ignium Motorsport's Hekon Gustad start on your second row, with the third row going to the pair of Corey Lazarus from Blackout Motorsport New Zealand and Team Germany's Philipp Hammer. They'll be followed up by the pairing of Haroldas Jotautas and Alex Peregrina on the fourth row for Over Limit Racing and Avatar Racing, with the teammate of Peregrina, Jimenez, starting P9, Ricardo Jimenez, and he's joined on the fifth row by Luke Andrews for FR20 SimRacing Purple. It is then going to be Sean Cranley-Swash and David Biggedite who start outside the top 10 on row number 6, followed up by the pairing behind them of Chris Cole and Aaron Tressler, and then Wayne Basson and Lewis Willesee start on your 8th row. Row 9 goes to Craig Shield and Alexander Wilford, with the top 20 being completed by Roxanne Marshall and Steve Kershaw. Watch out for Marshall, she's going to be trying to charge through the field as quickly as possible in the second race of the day. Craig Tillerston and Alistair Hatch on row 11, Sean Dobie and Joe Pinder on row number 12, and on our final row of the grid is Jack Ward and Steve Hobbs. But it's time for racing, ladies and gentlemen. The grid is set and we await the lights. 2 red lights, 3 red lights, 4 red lights, 5 red lights. and it's lights out and away. We go immediately once again. A short run on the lights here, and it's going to be a short run into turn number 1 as Karen Willis, he gets a brilliant start. Giles Phillips has to go defence immediately. It's 3 wide into turn 1, the battle for P2. Ryan Walker goes round the outside of Heckle Gestad. That's going to be an important defence coming into turn number 3, but Gestad immediately back on the inside. Walker covers him off, but Gestad's going to try and pitch on the inside. But he has to back off there as Walker absolutely closes the door as best he can, and Corey Lazarus capitalises as they make the way into loop hairpin. Through the left hander they go and up towards turn number 5, and in the charge they make the way on out here and coming up towards the Wellington straight. Meanwhile, further behind, Jotautas battling with Hammer already, with also what is there, a little bit of a move from Peregrina. Was they cover through, Hammer's had to back off with a poor run out of turn number 5 onto the brakes. Jotautas on the inside versus Peregrina. Onto the brakes they go, 3 wide into turn number 6. It's going to be Gestad who retakes the inside line. BNC Jotautas gets it done, and meanwhile Peregrina made to go deep as the Gestad defends as hard as he possibly can. Jotautas the master of these early moves, Peregrina just not quite able to make it happen. And once again Philipp Hammer in the charge. They make the way through Woodcock and up towards turn number 9. And the action is fast, it's frenetic, and it's not finished yet as Ricardo Jimenez takes a peek. They're trying to assist his teammate by looking up the inside of Hammer, but can't quite find it. And behind him is Sean Cranny Swash, who has found his way past Lou Andrews in the kerfuffle, making the way up through the opening 9 quarters. But as they make the way down through turns 10 into 14, now everyone goes one line astern for the meantime as they charge on through and coming up towards turn number 13. Will very shortly exiting out of Beckett's onto the chapel and run onto what is the hanger straight. It's now going to be who's got the better run here, and Brian Walker I think feeling some pressure as they come on through as they make the way on down. And very shortly into the braking zone, it's going to be Lazarus up the inside, can't quite find it. Peregrina, meanwhile, having to look up the inside versus Heckle Gestad, and this time I think he's going to make it count as they come on through the right-hander and down towards it's turn 16 via the valve they go, which still battles of plenty as Hammer now trying to look around the outside versus what's Gestad. We've got a lock-up in front. I believe that's Walker who's had a lock-up. We'll try and ascertain what exactly has happened very shortly, but Ryan Walker has in fact had a lock-up as he's let Corey Lazarus go. Lazarus up to P3, Walker down to P4, and well, that's 1 lap complete, and we've got plenty to go here in this 30-minute feature. But meanwhile behind, it's all kicking off in the silver class as Sean Cranny Swash having to defend versus Lou Andrews. Andrews being forced backwards here versus where's Aaron Tressler, and Aaron Tressler trying to get into the mix. He's got looking around his outside to inside here where he's going to be. In fact, that's going to be, I do believe that Lewis Willisey as Heckle Gestad looks back up the inside after lose now at the midpoint of the first lap. And as they come on through into a loop here, it's all getting very tight. The concertina effect in full display as just having to back off, otherwise he would have tapped the rear of Andrews. As Sean Cranny Swash trying to get everybody to fight one another in return, but no such fortune there for Sean Cranny Swash as the HW Racing driver makes his way up towards turn at number 6. Onto the brakes he goes, and we'll just keep it his call for now. As they come through turn 6 into our field at 7, onto the brakes they go furthermore. And meanwhile Roxanne Marshall, to give me an update, Marshall getting 1 place at the start of this race. P18 currently looking for a move round Craig Shields outside there, but can't quite find it. But meanwhile we've got more drama. Oh my good lord, it has gone all wrong for a number of drivers here. That's Sean Cranny Swash and Luke Andrews in contact. Heckle Gestad as well. We're not quite sure how it's played out, but I can tell you that right now 2 of the biggest names of the silver class here today have fallen by the wayside, and also one of the biggest names in the gold class of Gestad. And meanwhile Lewis Willisey now finds himself leading the silver class here as they come out of Cops Bend, but he's under huge pressure as they make the way from Maggots into Beckett's. He's got David Biggerdike immediately behind him, and as they come on down through Beckett's and on towards Chapel, right now Willisey finds himself leading for the first time this season. And will can he bring on home his first win in his Porsche Cup career as he powers his way down at the back straight of the hanger straight? He's going to be figured it's possible, as meanwhile Roxanne Marshall trying to pick off another name, and it will be in the form of Craig Tillotson on the left of your picture, and it's Dobie in front ahead of Marshall. And as they make their way into Stowe, looking around the outside, I don't think Tillotson got enough leverage to try and put up a defence there on the inside, and Roxanne Marshall gains another place. But as they come down and towards turn at number 16, meanwhile the battle is on for the leader of the silver class. David Biggerdike up the inside, contact with Willisey. He's got to be careful here. Biggerdike's got more to lose compared to Willisey. If Biggerdike finishes second, it won't be as much as a worry compared to he's out this race completely, given the fact he's ahead of Marshall. He wants to get the lead, of course. Nobody wants to finish second, but right now he needs to pick his fights, and as they make the way through turns 1 and 2, heading up towards 3, and Marshall is closing. Marshall's just found a way past Dobie into turn 1. As I looked out the commentary booth window, we see Marshall here for 24-hour bunty people, and well, I don't know what she's been told between that race 1 or 2, but I can tell you one thing, I think one of those words was go for broke, do not give in. And right now the 26 driver is doing everything right as she makes her way up towards turn number 5. But meanwhile, as we look to our leaders here, After which, 2.5 laps of racing, it is Karen Willesey who leads ahead of Giles Phillips P2, followed by Corey Lazarus P3, Ryan Walker P4 ahead of Haroldas Jotautas, and that's your top 5 as they all make their way through the camera shot. Behind Jotautas is Alex Peregrina, followed by Philipp Hammer and Ricardo Jimenez, albeit Jimenez in P8 is a further, what is there, 2 with about 5 seconds of field, with then your silver leader Lewis Willesey at P9 ahead of David Biggerdite, his main rival, and then best the rest is Alistair Hatcher in P11, who finds himself there in the ATEC racing car, and I don't think they're going to quite believe it as the Cyan machine right now on course for a potential silver podium. But as they make their way through Cox Bend, still plenty of time to go. We're only 5 minutes into this 30-minute race, and we've seen early drama. And we're speaking of that drama, we're going to take a look back very shortly as to what happened between Heckel Gestad, Sean Cranley-Swash, Luke Andrews, and also I do believe Aaron Tresler. In fact, here's the replay. Well, this was making their way out of what was Luffield Bend, and Cranley-Swash gets it wrong initially, and well, I think there's a bit more to this story than meets the eye. Was there contact between Cranley-Swash and Luke Andrews coming off the corner? We tried to take another look. This is from the perspective of Cranley-Swash. Paul ran out of the corner, has to catch the car, and Andrews there comes into the back and takes evasive action, and in the end, well, they all just staggered into one another, but Cranley-Swash was a small mistake, and well, for him, he was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, and everybody else came into the scene of the incident that he was having and added to it, so quite the domino effect. But as we return to live pictures, that explains the story as to what exactly happened coming on out of Luffield Bend. And well, now as we return to those live pictures, well, here is Lewis Willesey. He has been passed by David Biggerdite, in fact, off camera, and we'll get you a replay of what exactly happened there shortly. As David Biggerdite now takes the lead of the silver class, P9 overall, going on to what is the full flat under race conditions. But as he makes his way up towards turn number 3, Andrews into the pit lane. I think they are having to look at the car. There's something wrong with the car, and that has not been able to be settled down by the driver. And will Cranley-Swash has had to retire the car due to damage. Aaron Tresler as well has had to retire due to damage. And we're also hearing that Chris Cole and Heckel Gestad have had to retire their cars respectively. So it has been a high rate of attrition in the opening laps. But meanwhile, as we see David Biggerdite here trying to charge away from Lewis Willesey. Willesey trying to come back at him. Can't quite find it into turn 6. They're going to be line of stern under braking, and that gives us an opportunity to take a look back at how David Biggerdite found the move for the lead of the race. Well, as they made the way up towards Stowe Corner at turn number 15. Biggerdite up the inside there, Willesey for the silver class lead. And as they came on through, Willesey did not give in here. He went round the outside to hold the inside down the Vale. But as they headed into turn number 16, I think what you're going to see is the UKSimRacing machine of Biggerdite on the left of your picture just simply carry that outside line. It gets nose ahead. Willesey jumping onto the curb there. That's not helped in terms of maintaining speed. And as they exit, that's how David Biggerdite took the lead of the silver class on the previous lap. We're returning to the pictures now, and as we see our silver class leader, well, he was our silver class leader, and then surely not, commentator's curse applying here, ladies and gentlemen. The number 13 car has fallen backwards, and it's due to an off track as we're to understand it, and Lewis Willesey again finds himself leading the silver class, and we're not going to have another VIR feature race at the start of the season. For those of you uninitiated, in round number 2, it was 4 different drivers in the silver class who led at different points for extended periods of time, but all had major incidents which sort of dropped to the back of the pack, so had to fight their way back through, and Roxanne Marshall was the one who got the job done on the day, if my memory serves me correctly, albeit it seems as though nobody in the silver class wanted to win, and surely we're not seeing that here, as Biggerdite has had to come into the pits. There's a problem with the car after going off track, and well, that may be his race in tatters. But meanwhile, as we look here to Steve Kershaw chasing after where's Alistair Hatch. Well, this is going to open up the silver podium to a whole new heap of names, albeit Roxanne Marshall not too far behind, so I think Kershaw trying to get the move done before Marshall starts to try and put him back down the order. But as they make their way through turns 1 and 2, you can see that Kershaw having a peak versus Hatcher into turn 1 hasn't worked out. It's a lock up into 3, and coming out of Village Corner, Marshall's going to find all the space and time here to try and look for a move. But Kershaw going defensive as we ride on board with the 24-hour Punty People Try joint championship leader going into tonight, of course. And as Marshall powers away out of turn 4 into 5 in the tow as they make the way down at the Wellington straight. Will Kershaw defend this on the inside, or will he just simply think he's got the edge as they make their way into the braking zone? Marshall thinks about it, ducks the outside very late in the day onto the brakes here, and Marshall's going all in. And as they come up through turn 6 into 7, Kershaw's still there, defending on the inside. Kershaw's not giving up. There's going to be a little tap between the two of them. It's a love tap at best as they make their way out of Luffield Corner. Kershaw defends hard, and he proves he's not just there for show, he's there to hold on to the podium. Well, this is going to enable Alistair Hatcher to run away, and Marshall right now will be thinking what could have been a smooth move has ended up not going quite right away. It's gone astray, but still plenty more places to go for an overtake as they make the way through turn number 9. And as they do, meanwhile, we look from them up towards Alex Peregrina, who has got ahead of Haroldas Jotautas quite recently, and still Philipp Hammer behind. This is the battle for P5 between the 3 championship leaders in the gold class, with Ryan Walker just ahead. And Walker right now must be feeling that something's coming behind us. Meanwhile, looking in ahead of them, coming up from behind, that is going to be Corey Lazarus up the inside of Giles Phillips. Phillips going a bit deep there, and I think Phillips just letting the move go. I think feeling that Lazarus is the faster driver at this point of the race and protecting the car. And of course, you may remember Phillips really talked about at Le Mans in the 42-minute special about how the fact he needed to protect the tyres for so long to give him the opportunity to chase after P2 come the end. And I think we're seeing that from Phillips here again today. He's protecting the car now to give himself the option to go on the offensive in the final 10 minutes. And as he makes his way onto another lap into turn 1 he goes. Peregrina, Jotautas and Hammer stay as they are, with Walker just ahead of them. And Peregrina is closing on the P4 driver as they make their way up towards Village Corner. But meanwhile, further behind, we are in the Roxanne Marshall has found a way past what is Kershaw. But up the inside, it's turn 3 goes Peregrina. Walker there, being caught a little bit shy. Albeit now coming back on the inside, and Peregrina turns and he finds the side of Walker's car. And Ryan Walker gets his elbows out and says, well, no, you're not just going to have it that easy. And Peregrina's knocked to the back of the group as they powers on down. But of course, with this, now Jotautas and Hammer will be feeling as though they can go hunt after Walker. But Walker definitely biting in here and saying, no, you may be championship leaders, but I'm going to give this my best shot. Jotautas says, okay, we'll try an exercise. And as he goes around the outside to inside, Walker then made to go a little bit deep into left field bend. Hammer up the inside, as meanwhile Peregrina trying to go round the outside of him. And as they come out the corner, Walker a bit slow, takes the gravel slightly, and Peregrina follows him. Meanwhile, Jotautas gets ahead. Hammer's still there on the inside versus Walker. And as they head up towards Coxman at turn number 9, it's going to be close here. Walker's going to go all in, but Hammer's not going to back out here. Hammer needs this move. He needs it now, because otherwise Peregrina will come back in earnest, going down the hanger straight. But you can see there the amount of speed that's been taken out of both Hammer and Walker, but Peregrina having to back off. He hasn't got the speed to follow them through, and as they make the way from Beckett's into Beckett's, Hammer does finally get ahead of Walker. But goodness me, Ryan Walker definitely showing his defensive nuance. And as they come through Beckett's onto Chapel, now it's Peregrina who once again finds himself stuck behind the Satellite Racing 95 car. And I think this time the 28 driver will be feeling as though he's got a good run up the inside. But what will Walker do here? Will he find a way to stay on what is the outside to inside down through the Vale? I don't think so. There as Peregrina simply goes up the inside. And now Walker tries to come back in via a cutback move, but as they head down towards the breaks over turn 16, I think if Walker's going to go from this far back, Peregrina will see it coming, but in the end they stay as they are. And now Peregrina finally moves up to P6, albeit he's lost out in the run versus Jotautas and Hammer, albeit they're only 8 tenths up the road by comparison, so he can close back up. But Peregrina right now, definitely not the way he wanted to get ahead of Walker. But it's been absolutely brilliant for us here in the Cotton Tube. Moving to you guys and girls tuning in at home on the UKSimRacing YouTube channel, as we do see Peregrina right now trying to make a little bit more headway, but as he comes up towards turn number 3, still plenty of time in the day. And meanwhile, we look back to Craig Shield, who has fallen behind Derek Big Light quite recently. As Big Light has found the move for his P17 overall, P9 in the silver class. But indeed, right now, we look from the fortune of Big Light to Steve Kershaw on the inside of Marshall, and Kershaw goes very deep. Meanwhile, Sean Dobie doing the same there. It's lock-up central at turn number 3. They're all going for it in the silver class, and well, I can imagine here for the likes of Kershaw and Dobie, they see an open door to a potential top 5 finish as a minimum. They are going to take it with both arms wide open. But Roxanne Marshall holding off the charge of Steve Kershaw, and the 24-hour punch people trying now only 2 places away from potentially returning to the top step. It's been some time since we've seen that Marshall up there. It's Alistair Hatcher first who she's got to take on, and that will be at 9 tenths away. And it's going to be a further 3 seconds to Lewis Willisey, who right now putting in an absolutely brilliant performance in the lead of the silver class in P9 overall. But meanwhile, speaking of leader classes, here's your race leader and your gold class leaders of Karen Willisey and Corey Lazarus. And as they make the way in towards Beckett's corner, you can see Lazarus here, he's closed up at a rate of knots, and right now all over the back of Willisey as they make the way out of 14 and down the hanger straight they go. Now Lazarus looking for the move, Willisey defends in the middle of centre, and as they head on down, we can see Lazarus there taking a bit of a tap to the rear bumper as they come in towards Stowe corner. Lazarus going all the way around the outside. This is bold from Lazarus. He goes for it. He just a little bit wide. Now, will he have to give the time back? I don't think so. As he comes down to the braking zone, he's going all in on the inside. Into the chicane he goes a bit deep, but he'll defend the inside of 17. Lazarus tries to park it again. He just about gets the car stopped. Well, as he thinks about it into club corner, and Lazarus has to give him the space. And they exit and they make the way onto another lap. And as they do, well, Willisey's there, but he's not quite close enough to go side side by side to turn 1, and Corey Lazarus finds himself leading, and well, goodness me, it's been some time since we've seen Lazarus lead in a race. You'd have to think back to Catalonia, the feature race, all the way back in season 5 for that, but right now the Blackout Motorsport New Zealand driver has made it count, but of course he does have other rivals who are trying to hound him, not just Willis. Here's Willis there, has got Charles Phillips on his inside, and Phillips sees the doors open and says, well, thank you very much, and Karen Willis has no response other than Charles Phillips simply goes on through, and right now the battle for the gold podium is intensifying as Phillips has to defend here into turn 6, onto the brakes he'll go, and all the way round will Karen Willis trying to make the move stick to the inside of turn number 7 as they come up towards the right-hander at Luffield. We'll hear Phillips now on himself on the outside. It's all about power control at this point. Cameron Willis, of course, wary of the fact he's got his nose ahead of Phillips, falling away a little bit there as he tucks in behind, albeit in fact he's going to try and stick it around the outside of Woodcock up into Cobbs. I think Phillips here would be wise to just try and cut it back out of Cobbs' corner, but still he's going all in as they make the way in towards turn number 9. Willis goes deep on the inside line. Phillips does cut it back in the end, and now it's going to be a drag race up towards Maggots, and who out of the two of them is going to be the braver. And you see Willis there trying to get Phillips to back out as he goes as close as possible to his rival, but then Giles Phillips gets it done, takes a little bit of grass there, all the way through into Beckett's onto the brakes, and Giles Phillips finally finds his way into P2 in the number 12 car for Phillips GP, but it's not over still as now Willis trying to come back as they make their way down the hanger straight. Philip Hammer now within 7/10 of this battle and closing fast, but meanwhile Willis looking around the outside, and again you can see the Willis Racing team bringing a car that's running less rear wing compared to its peers. The speed he's able to take on the straight by comparison, but with the high downforce here, of course that wing being the benefit of Giles Phillips, but Willis on the inside here into Club by the Vale, and as they come from 16 to 17, Phillips being pushed back to P3, and now Philip Hammer closed up as we ride on board with your effective championship leader going into tonight, and number 1 driver from Germany making his way across the timeline into the second half of the race they go, and as they head in towards turn number 1, fastest lap of the race, Philip Hammer at 2:03.313. The man is hounding the car around the circuit, he is hustling, and he's looking for the move out the inside on Phillips, under brake. Phillips tries to outbrake him through Village Corner. It'll go to the loop hairpin, and it's going to be Phillips on the inside, and Philip Hammer being made to literally find all the space on the outside. Phillips is not giving up, as meanwhile Alex Peregrina up the inside of Jotautas into loop gets the move done, and I think right now Peregrina and Jotautas are agreeing not to battle one another too hard because they both want to respectively go hunting after the podium place in the gold class. This is going to build up to a spectacle come the end, as meanwhile the over limit racing driver Jotautas just falling behind Peregrina at this time, and Ryan Walker also there 1.1 seconds off of them as they make their way through Luffield Bend. But as they do, we say hello to those of you in the YouTube chat, including Racing Dutch and also Jonas Silberg. I do believe that is how you say your surname, but I do apologise if I butchered it. I'll learn for next time. And as they make their way on around it, we have had some issues with seeing the YouTube chat tonight, so apologies if we have missed any of you at any point. But right now, I hope you're all enjoying the racing, as meanwhile Craig Tillotson makes his way on through at turn at number 6, and well in at P16 trying to chase down David Bigelite, and again these two fighting for the scraps outside the top 5 of the silver class, are both having difficult races, as meanwhile Alistair Hatcher under pressure from Steve Kershaw in the battle for P2 in the silver class. This is P10 overall, and well it looks as though Roxanne Marshall has lost out quite significantly. We're not exactly sure what's happened to Marshall in recent laps, other than Marshall has fallen off the circuit, and respectively therefore in fact Marshall's had to come into the pit lane due to damage picked up on the car, and that explains the story. In fact, it was a drive-through penalty for Roxanne Marshall due to track limits. We've just had it confirmed, not damage to the car. Marshall had to come through for a drive-through, the instant count being hit, and that's put all the way down in P6 in the class, what is P14 overall. So we are going to see a silver podium today filled with an entire variety of new names, and what's absolutely brilliant for those names not already up there. And right now Hatcher finds himself right on the bitter end of battling with Kershaw as they make the way through turn 16 and 17, but as they do, meanwhile looking further on down, Joe Pinder for Ignium Motorsport, he's all over the back of Craig Tillotson in the wounded Porsche, as you can see here, the 22 driver in the Ignium Motorsport machine trying to find a bit more time to take P8 to the silver class, P16 overall, and will not really the run there through the chicane, but as he makes his way through the right-hander of Club and on towards another lap, up towards Abbey he goes. Well, Hobbs into the pit lanes now. It's going to be a battle for what is P16 as Hobbs comes on in, and I believe that maybe for a drive-through penalty as well, or perhaps some damage on the car. Either way, Pinder getting a good run here as he looks up the inside into turn number 3, goes all in, but he's carried a lot of speed, and the car steps out on the rear as he tries to rotate it, and it goes wrong for Pinder as he gets the car righted, but not the way he's wanted it to go, as he drops down now to the bottom end of the top 20. But as he rejoins, meanwhile, we rejoin the battle in action inside the top 10, in particular in P2, and behind with Karen Willesey in the aforementioned position ahead of Giles Phillips and Philipp Hammer. And will Hammer here now find himself between the rock and the hard place. He's got the rock in terms of defensive driving from Phillips in front, and meanwhile he's got the hard place coming from behind of Alex Peregrina, who is looking to find again an advantage on Hammer and beat his rival in the championship here in order to square up the championship standings. But of course, saying it's one thing, achieving it's another, and as they make the way on down the Hanger Straight this time, we've still got 10 minutes to go. Still plenty of time out there for our drivers as they make the way in to what is there, the Stowe corner, and coming on through as they do. Meanwhile, we'd just like to let you know, ladies and gentlemen, that we will very shortly be opening up the driver of the day voting system for you. Indeed, the survey for which is pretty popular. It's all gone wrong here between Wes Hammer, Phillips, and also Avatar. Well, not the Avatar, the racing driver, in fact, which uses his name Peregrina, as they made the way through turn 16. And goodness me, well, that is not the way anybody expected that to play out. And Alex Peregrina has found his way on through. But what exactly was the story there? That is the question that we need to answer with regards to them all coming together. And now, as we take a look back, this is what happened in the battle for P3 only moments ago. Well, Giles Phillips was leading this battle down into turn 16 onto the brakes. They went 3 wide. Hammer hot on the brakes here. Phillips turns in, and well, I think they're all 3 of them could have negotiated a little bit better. I think Phillips would not have known that he was going to have both Hammer and also Peregrina on his inside. But Peregrina, they're going in late. Hammer going in late, and well, 3 does not go into 1 apex, I can tell you that, as we take another look back. And this was the onboard from Alex Peregrina's car as he came on down. We're going to see here Peregrina goes to broke under brake, and so does Hammer, and well, he'll argue he would squeeze the apex, but Peregrina gaining the most there. I think they're going to be on at firm but hard racing, but still that'll be one for the stewards to decide. But as Hammer powers on through it in the live pictures now, it interrupted the train of thought, which was that we have just opened up the driver of the day vote, and you can vote for your driver of the day using the link here. And of course, driver of the day for the last race, as asked by Racing Dutch, and I do think that's appropriate we tell you, was Heckel Gestad, who did pick up. It was 27% of the vote that went to the gold class driver of Heckel Gestad at Le Mans. But whether it's Heckel Gestad who's caught your eye today, or alternatively some of our other drivers, perhaps it's the battles in the silver class that have caught your eye, and in particular perhaps the likes of Lewis Willesey or Jack Ward, do let us know by voting for your driver of the day using the link in the YouTube description. But meanwhile, as we look back to the aforementioned silver battles, this is Ward up the inside. Oh, where's Alistair Hatcher on the inside in the run into Maggots, and immediately storming through. And will the Willesey racing driver hit in the 48 car? He's having to recover this race, there's no doubt about it, but as he comes out of 13 into 14 right now in the number 48 car, his next target will be Lewis Willesey, albeit the gap between himself and his teammate is currently 4.5 seconds, and I think that is going to be quite the quandary to close down in the time remaining, even though he may try as he makes his way up through Stowe corner once again. And we should just let you know that votes do close the driver of the day as of midnight tonight, or 23:59 BST or UTC at +1. But meanwhile, as the racing continues, and we're hearing that Giles Phillips has been involved in a further moment or instant, we just dropped it down to P7 from what was at the time at P5 up the front of the field. All battling has calmed down for a brief moment, ladies and gentlemen. And with that in mind, I think now our drivers are trying to nurse the cars to the conclusion. But as we do look to the very front of the field, here is Corey Lazarus in a lonely lead. And then Cameron Willesey still under pressure from Alex Peregrina as they make the way through turns 6 and 7, with Peregrina all over the back of the second place runner. And Jotautas and Hammer, well, these two, they're not shy of battling one another, I can tell you that, as they come on through turn number 7 and onwards towards what will be Woodcote and Copse shortly. And Hammer all over the back of Jotautas, and well, after the incident that occurred on the previous day, he'll be hoping things do not play out that way this time in terms of it all went wrong, and Peregrina really the beneficiary where it all went wrong for Hammer and also for Phillips, the one who lost out the most. They're all still racing now with damage on the cars, and Peregrina trying to go around the outside of Willesey. And through turn 10 into 11 they go, and Alex Peregrina moves up to P2, and I think Karen Willesee there not pushing too hard and just deciding to focus on holding on to P3 given the time remaining, as meanwhile Hammer still trying to find his way past Jotautas, and we are definitely going to see an interesting battle between these two, plus also I think Willesee will be pulled into it right towards the end of the race. But meanwhile on a recovery drive here, making the second recovery drive of the day in this one race alone, Roxanne Marshall now for 24-hour punty people try and look for the move here versus Sean Dobie in the run into Maggots, and as they do, Dobie on the inside to outside, Marshall outside to inside, and it's only going to go one way, or is it in Marshall's mind? In fact, Dobie sticks his foot in and decides, no, he's not going to give in, and Marshall made to wait a little bit longer as they come on through what is that Beckett's corner, but Dobie goes deep. As we ride on the rear bump here of Dobie's car, well, Marshall is going to have a huge overspeed as they make their way down the hanger straight. Also look at David Biggerdike here, he's trying to make it 3 wide. He's got the double draft initially, he goes to the middle of the road. It's going to be 3 wide on the brake, and Dobie on the outside, Biggerdike in the middle of the road, Marshall on the inside, and Marshall takes the 2 places, as meanwhile we can see here Biggerdike also gains 1 place up the inside of Dobie. It's Sean Dobie defended well, albeit not in the right place at the right time, but seemed into Stowe corner, and now Marshall and Biggerdike, the 2 silver championship leaders, find themselves battling for what will be P5 in the silver class, P13 overall with 5 minutes to go as they make their way on to the next lap. But as they charge their way up towards turn number 1, all the way through the right hander they'll go, and as they do, meanwhile we look from them to Craig Tillotson a bit further back, who right now trying to push on here, chasing after his teammate for FR20 Sim Racing and Wayne Basson as they head into Abbey Corner. Tillotson going straight on there. I think some dirty air just catches the car, plus some damage he's got on the car. You see that on the front right side from the driver's perspective, front left from your camera perspective. The camera now turns round on cue, and as he makes his way through turn number 3 into 4, I think Tillotson at this point just trying to focus on bringing home that P10 in class, P18 overall at this stage. But meanwhile, looking from him, 2 drivers who right now are focused on a deadlock between one another. It's Jotautas versus Hammer as they head on through. Maggots into Beckett's once more, and this will be with 2 more runs on through the corners to go as they head on through Beckett's corner, and you can see how Jotautas just simply keeping his line and not being phased by it as they make their way up towards turn number 15. It's a long charge here for the pair. Hammer tucked in, and well, I think Hammer just does not have enough straight line speed. He's got it all through the corners, although I think he's going to try and prove us wrong on the brakes here into Stowe. It's going to be bold here from Hammer to go for it, but meanwhile on the outside with Jotautas, they come through it down the Vale. Jotautas still on the inside, Hammer on at the outside as they head into the braking zone, and well, who's going to come off the stronger here with Hammer going outside to inside, Jotautas inside to outside, 2 wide through 17. They'll head 2 wide into club corner, but Hammer's got his nose ahead, and well, here's Jotautas who will need to cut it back as they make the way onto the penultimate lap of racing here at Silverstone today. As they make their way towards turn 1, Philipp Hammer does take P4, but he has cost him a lot of time in doing so, and it's now a 3-second gap to Karen Willesee in P3, and can he find it? That'll be the question. But meanwhile we're seeing, oh goodness me, and that's David Biggerdike into the wall, and that is at Stowe at turn number 15. What on earth has happened to David Biggerdike? We'll chase after Roxanne Marshall, and late on the brakes there, a little bit of wobble on the car, and I think in the end having to let the brakes go to avoid tapping the back of his championship rival. But the DC Sim Racing driver having his race take a turn for the worse as we return to the live pictures, and well now as he makes way into the pit lane, that damage I think has put him out of contention for getting to the checker flag unless he does have a faster pair available, but we'll have to see. But meanwhile looking from him to Hammer, Jotautas still there right behind the Team Germany driver, and will the number of retirements or visits to the pit lane are continuing to accrue as Hammer powers his way on through Woodcourt and up towards Cops Bend, and 2 minutes remaining, and after this lap there'll be 1 more to go, and Giles Phillips under a bit of pressure here to try and hunt down Walker in his closing stages. Walker holding on to P6 at this time, Phillips 6 tenths off, he is closing little by little, and in fact they're taking a whole 1.5 tenths out of Walker coming on through Cops Bend, and it looks though that Walker just not quite matching the pace he had earlier in the day, and in fact Phillips putting in personal best now as the fuel's low in the car and he has protected the tyres, and we could see Giles Phillips make 1 more move before this is all over. But then again, Walker's not going to make it easy. He will not just be walked on as they make the way out of what is the Chapel Corner and on towards Cops Bend. Well, not Cops Bend, they go onto Stowe, they go, I should say, via the hanger straight, and as they power the way on down, well, it stays as it's for now. I think next time around it may be a lot closer, but we'll have to wait and see. But as they come on through at turn at number 15, we have confirmation that David Biggerdike has made his way back out onto circuit, so he will be able to finish this race under his own impetus, P19, but he's the last of our runners, and we have had a grand total of 7 retirements in this race, from most recent at 2 earliest. Craig Shield, also at Joe Pinder, Alexander Wilfer, Sean Cranley-Swash, Chris Cole, Aaron Truss and Hekon Gestad. It has been a difficult day in the feature race here in round 11 of the Porsche Cup Season 6. But meanwhile, for a good day, it has been a brilliant one for Corey Lazarus and Blackout Motorsport New Zealand car. The number 4 driver here, well, Peregrina behind by 1.1 second and is closing at a rate of approximately a second a lap. But on this final lap, Lazarus does not need to push too hard. All he needs to do is get the car home and not make any silly mistakes here, and he will be back on that top step. But as he comes on through turn 6 into 7, meanwhile, Sean at Dobie behind in P18, chased after Craig Tillotson right at the end, and well, these are too close together. Steve Hobbs recently passed in Tillotson for position in the silver class for what is at P8 in silver, P16 overall, and Sean Dobie trying to gain at P9 in silver right at the end as he goes on to the final lap. And it's 30 minutes on the clock now, ladies and gentlemen. So next time around when the race leaders come for it, it's the checkered flag. Dobie looks up the inside into Abbey corner, and well, it's going to be Tillotson who reacts there. I think that Dobie's going to come a bit deep into the corner, and well, both drivers there misinterpreting what the other's doing, but Sean Dobie getting it wrong. Meanwhile, Roxanne Marshall under a bit of pressure here from what is Luke Andrews, and well, these two championship rivals, of course, for Andrews 4 points behind Marshall going into tonight. Well, how it's going to be turned upside down come the end, we'll have to wait and see when we go to Japan in 2 weeks' time. But meanwhile, whilst all this is playing out, we've got an instant for Alex Peregrina, and it's all gone wrong for the Avatar racing driver coming out of what was Beckett's in to Chapel. And what exactly happened? Coming on through and just losing the rear there, the car letting go. But as we return to your live pictures, ladies and gentlemen, here is your race leader, and as he comes through the final couple of corners, it has been a while since we've seen a New Zealander take to the top step, but today you're going to see him take to it once again. Corey Lazarus comes through the final corner and he takes victory in Silverstone in the round 11 feature in the golden overall categories. Head of Karen Willesee P2 and a brilliant drive from the Willesee racing driver as well. Philipp Hammer P3 ahead of Haroldas Jotautas, and it'll be Ryan Walker P5 who holds off Charles Phillips to line. Alex Peregrina P7 after that late spin. Ricardo Jimenez, his teammate behind for Avatar Racing P8, and then Lewis Willesee comes up through the last couple of corners. I don't think he's going to believe it, ladies and gentlemen. For Tresla Motorsport, he picks up a win for the first time this season. He comes out the final corner and he's done it. He crosses the line, silver class winner, P9 overall, ahead of Jack Ward P10, runner up in the silver class of Willesee Racing, and Steve Kershaw completes the silver podium ahead of Alistair Hatcher, with Luke Andrews crossing the line ahead of Roxanne Marshall P13, Marshall P14, and then it will be Wayne Basson P15 as he heads out the final couple of corners in a difficult race today for the FR20 Sim Racing outfit in general. Indeed, all of them having difficulty at some point in the race. P16 to teammate Steve Hobbs. And it will be Sean Dobie who comes across the line just ahead in P17, ahead of Craig Tillotson and David Biggedeye to complete your finishes on the lead lap, and indeed all your finishes in this race. And well, goodness me, the number of retirements we have seen today, a grand total of 7, as we said earlier, the highest retirement rate we have seen all season in a single race, and it has definitely been a dramatic day at Silverstone in the United Kingdom. But for Lewis Willesee, it's been drama for all the right reasons, as he's brought home his first win of the season. You can see there Cameron Willesee, brother to his teammate, making their way on through. In fact, ex-teammates, of course, with Tresla Motorsport being an alternative team to at the Willesee Racing outfit. But Lewis Willesee here absolutely pleased and doing a bit of wheel spin there for the crowd. He knows he's achieved a massive result here as he gets himself set, and Roxanne Marshall had to take a bit of evasive manoeuvring. But whilst we do see Lewis Willesee going for a few donuts, meanwhile, we do now look to the scenic pictures and give you those results subject to any stewards' inquiries, and I think there may be a few. But after 30 minutes of racing here in our second race of the day at Silverstone in Season 6 of the Porsche Cup hosted by UKSimRacing, Corey Lazarus bringing on home the win in the end by a margin of what was 3 seconds for Blackout Motorsport New Zealand ahead of Cameron Willesee for Willesee Racing. To be fair, the pressure that was enacted on Corey Lazarus right at the end by Alex Peregrina wasn't enough, and in the end Peregrina making a mistake that saw him drop out of the podium places, and well, with Peregrina falling, it was Philipp Hammer who would move up into P3 to take the final spot of the golden overall podium for Team Germany. Haroldas Jotautas P4 there for Over Limit Racing, another great great set of performances and keeping the gap to Hammer consistent, with Ryan Walker P5 there for Satellite Racing, showing again his defensive ability and the fact that he's not there just to make up the field. Indeed, all the drivers showing today just what they can do when they're battling with the best, but Ryan Walker in particular really standing out. And then Giles Phillips P6 there for Phillips GP, ahead of Alex Peregrina, the Avatar Racing driver who didn't have it go his way, and the same for his teammate there, Ricardo Jimenez P8, hoping he perhaps could get a little bit more out of it, but still completing the run to a P8 finish. Lewis Willesey at P9 there in his first Silver Class win of the season for Tresla Motorsport, ahead of Jack Ward to round off the top 10 for Willesey Racing, and then Steve Kershaw P11, best of the rest for Night and Day Racing, and with that performance of course rounding off the silver podium of Willesey, Ward and Kershaw. As such, at P12, the 8 Racing Team Cyan driver not quite able to make it onto the podium, missing out right at the end, but still he'll be pleased with a top 5 finish, and a great one at that, ahead of Luke Andrews for FR20 SimRacing Purple, who managed just to creep ahead of 24-hour Punty People's Roxanne Marshall at the close, and then Wayne Basson, Steve Hobbs, Sean Dobie and Craig Tillerston completing your top 18. And as we continue to look on down the order there, David Bigadai in a difficult day of racing for the DC Sim Racing driver. P19 was the best he could do it in the second race, ahead of Craig Shaw at P20 for 8 Racing Team Siam. Craig Shield starts off our retirees, of course, with only 19 finishers, all of them on the lead lap, but Craig Shield retiring 5 laps from the end. 6 laps in the end, it was Joe Pinder for Ignium Motorsports, ahead of Alexander Wilfert for Team Germany, who retired 10 laps from the finish. Chris Cole 13 laps on the finish, as were Sean Cradley-Swash and Aaron Tresler, and in 14 laps on the finish, having to retire on what was effectively the second lap of the day. Ignium Motorsports' Hekun Gustad, P26 out of P26, so 26 starters and what was a grand total of 19 finishers in the round 11 feature. A difficult one for many, but still it has been a story amongst the field. And well, ladies and gentlemen, whilst you're perhaps deliberating about voting for your driver of the day, and just to remind you once again, don't forget to vote for your driver of the day, as votes close at midnight tonight, and we do just repost the link in the YouTube chat. We're going to be taking a brief breather before we have the opportunity to interview some of our drivers and get their thoughts on what has been a fantastic day of racing at what is the home of British motorsport here in Northamptonshire. But do make sure to cast your vote in terms of who stood out, but we'll be back in approximately 10 to 12 minutes time for those interviews. Don't go anywhere, you won't want to miss them. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, it is time for our post-round interviews with our selected drivers. And today we have 3 volunteers who have submitted themselves for interview. We start off with our gold class driver and our feature race hero, in a way you could say, find himself back on the top step of the podium after quite some time, of Corey Lazarus for Blackout Motorsport New Zealand. And then we'll be hearing from the silver driver who took the win in the feature race. And the first time this season he's been able to notch a win. I believe it may even be his first win in his Porsche Cup career, from Tesla Motorsport Lewis Willisey in the 44, for then coming on to Over Limit Racing's Haroldas Jotautas, the gold class driver there in the number 45, find himself battling hard for the podium in both races. But as we do have Corey Lazarus joining me right now, all the way from over in New Zealand. Corey, well, what a brilliant pair of races today, and well, I have to say, the pace was absolutely ferocious. Silverstone seems to be your cup of tea.
Morning, Paul. Yeah, it was good fun, mate. A little bit unexpected. Got lucky there at the end, the feature, but yeah, terrific fun, mate. Great track to race on.
Oh, indeed. And taking it from the top, qualifying, it seemed as though it wasn't quite necessarily your strong suite compared to what we saw subsequently in the race itself. In qualifying, I do believe you ended up quite a way down inside the top 10 in what was a P5 start, but you seem to have pace for the front 2 rows. What happened?
I just couldn't get temperature into the fronts and quali in the prep laps, and yeah, it just wasn't good enough. Just didn't put the lap together, and probably pushing a little bit too hard, and just wasn't smooth enough. Yeah, that was the result. P5. I had done plenty of practice in the race. I was confident in the race pace to an extent. So yeah, just try to keep with that front group in that first race as they started to pull away from the start. Yeah, keep it on the track and no slowdowns was the goal.
Oh, indeed. And speaking about that first race of the day, after what was a very dramatic start for the opening 4 corners, we saw things begin to settle down. And in particular for yourself, it looked as though it was almost as if a switch had been flipped and suddenly you were in attack mode.
Yeah, I'm not too sure. I don't think I had the pace to keep up as such with the front 3 guys. They didn't battle so hard, and naturally they wouldn't have slowed down so much and allowed me to, get back onto the rear of that train. But that's what happened. They just fought each other and naturally slowed down, and I had a bit of a gap behind us. So, yeah, no real pressure from behind, just clear air in front, which sort of allowed us to catch up to the back and watch those guys battle.
Indeed, and getting close in the pursuit, we saw time and time again, fastest lap going your way. It was almost as if in that chase after the top 3, you were seeing how far you could push. And I guess the question is, when you were finding all that time in the sprint race, was that a prelude, if you will, to what you were looking to achieve in the feature?
Not too sure. I don't think I thought that far ahead, really. It was more just trying to be as fast as possible and as smooth as possible. I actually didn't have any idea that I was doing quick laps in that sprint race, so it was it's a nice surprise, but probably because the front 3 were battling so much. But yeah, no, there was no real plan as such. It was just more of just head down, bum up, just have a go.
We definitely gave it a good go, and with what was a P4 finish, then moved into what was the feature race, and that P4 mean that you would start P5 on the grid for our second race of the day. It looked very tight into the opening couple of corners, but you quickly found yourself up into P3.
Yeah, got a reasonably good start there. I forget who it was that was in 4th. Maybe it was Ryan, but I'm not too sure. I jumped 1 spot right off the start, and then the gaggle of cars just all grouped up together coming out of the mini hairpin there, and yeah, everybody's on the limit on corner exit, and I don't, something happened with Hakon behind me. Nothing intentional. If there was contact, I'm not sure. I don't think I got a 4X or anything like that, but everybody was just on the limit. So yeah, look, when everybody's in close quarters on cold tires, first lap, the adrenaline's pumping, everybody's trying to make moves. That's just what happened. Just managed to get up a couple of spots, and then it was just consolidate and look after the tires.
Oh, indeed. And then once moving into P3, with everything that happened behind, bit of a vacuum appeared in front and you wasted no time in chasing down Giles Phillips and eventually Cameron Willesee for the lead. I have to ask, did it give you flashbacks to what was the Circuit de Barcelona Catalunya in Season 5 in that feature race where you were absolutely unstoppable?
Yeah, I'm not too sure. I really was just solely focused on the two cars in front and keeping an eye on the relative because, you know, once Philip and Alexander get clear, they're going to be putting in super quick lap times, and I was lucky. Ryan did a tremendous job, I think, in just keeping them entertained while it sort of allowed the three of us up front to pull away a little bit. And yeah, the two boys up front, Giles and Cameron, was super quick and consistent, really. And yeah, I just followed them until we got right up on the back of them and just try to be clean and make some nice moves.
Indeed, smooth passes made for both places, and once in the lead, it was about trying to get as much distance I can imagine from the field before Philipp Hammer and company were able to get through.
100%, mate. Like, because you know it's inevitable. Alexander and Philip, you know, they are super fast, so they're going to be coming regardless. So it's, yeah, it was just head down, bum up, stay focused, hit your apexes, hit your brake markers, and just try and do your best to get away. And then obviously the boys behind us made it a little bit harder for Philip and Alexander to get through, which probably costed some time in the bigger scheme of things.
Oh, indeed. And speaking of that final lap, we saw there was a 1 second gap between yourself and Alex Peregrina going on to lap. It looks like it was closing very fast, and a mistake coming through Maggots into Beckett meant that you were essentially the de facto winner.
Yeah, he was coming super quick. I think when he got into second place, it was like a 2.9 second lead, and within 2 laps, he got it down to like 1.4 or something like that. I was fairly confident if I could get through Beckett's, then I would be able to put the car in the right spot to hold off. But he was super quick, pushing really hard. I was absolutely grateful for that. Unfortunate for him, but my fuel load was very, very low. So I backed right off and actually clutched down the back straight because I had no fuel. And we got across the line with like 0.2 or something like that. She started to cough pretty early. So yeah, grateful if Alexander did spin. I may have just run out of petrol.
Oh, goodness me, right on the limit. And pretty much that's been the story today of the entire gold class, encapsulated by you bringing home the win at the very end. And, well, with that win, of course, a return to the top still. It's been some time. It must be a great feeling.
Yeah, it is. It is. There was quite a lean run there for a while, and with the amount of racing we're doing, I think we've missed a couple of rounds or something, or like Le Mans was just a disaster. I think we had a pretty bad run before that as well, so definitely good to get back to a track we are relatively familiar with and have, you know, half decent pace. Yeah, it was really nice feeling crossing the line up front.
Oh, indeed. And looking forward now to the rounds that lie after the second mid-season break. Of course, in 2 weeks' time, we make our way to Japan for the Suzuka Grand Prix circuit. How are you feeling for a circuit a little bit closer to home?
It's such a cool track, yeah. I'm super excited for Suzuka. I do enjoy it. It's sort of one of the earliest tracks I ever raced on in the peak up. And yeah, it's just fast, it's flowing, and it's tough to pass. But there's also a ton of room for mistakes on that track. So yeah, it should make for some good racing. Looking forward to it. Can't wait.
We look forward to seeing how you get on in Japan in 2 weeks' time. But just before we do let you go, Corey, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to on the broadcast today?
Yeah, of course. Thanks to everybody that turned up on the grid tonight. You know, the majority of the time it's super clean racing, and appreciate the competition and yourself, UKSR. Samuel, my teammate, we also have a third member now with the Blackett Motorsport team, Dylan Shepherd, who came on board from Australia during the week, and he's been a massive help to Samuel and myself. So big thanks to him. And just a couple of quick ones with Distraction, Sim Gear, and Chase Clothing. Sponsors very much appreciated.
Well, Corey, we've really appreciated you giving us the time on the field once again, and indeed in the interview room. Congratulations on your great pair of results, but especially your win in the feature race, and we look forward to seeing you at Suzuka in 2 weeks' time.
Thanks very much, Paul.
Have a great day.
Good week.
So hearing there from Corey Lazarus, and well, you can imagine how early in the morning it may be for him on the other side of the world, but still that did not deter him from putting down an absolutely tireless pair of performances, and in his own words, qualifying not being at the session he wanted, not able to find that lap, and well, it was a P5 start, but he very quickly found himself having to push on through, moved up to P4, and then chasing down the top three, and not aware of the fact he was putting in fastest lap after fastest lap, given the top three were starting to nip time off of one another in battling, but still that was a sign of things to come in the feature. And after a phenomenal start plus a bit of an instant behind involving a multitude of drivers including Hekon Gestad and also the likes of Alex Peregrina and company, well, the door was open for Corey Lazarus to go charging after Phillips GP's Giles Phillips, and then Cameron Willesee to bring home the win. And well, once leading, it was all about just making that gap as wide as possible before the inevitable of Peregrina and Hammer would come on through. But in the end, they didn't have enough in the tank in order to prevent Lazarus from bringing home an all-new win in his campaign in Season 6 of the Porsche Cup. And congratulations to him once again. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we now come to our second interview of the day, and we go from our gold class driver to none other than our silver class winner in race number 2, and of course what was a P6 finish in class in race number 1, and it was Lewis Willesee. And as we get ready to hear from him, it's going to be interesting to hear his perspective on what has been a mixed set of performances, but I think particularly a second race of the day that's turned it all around. And as he joins me now from Tresla Motorsport, Lewis, what a mixed pair of races in the end. I think we could say that for the entire silver class. It was unpredictable, and well, in the end, was it a bit of a predictable end today? We'll win in the silver class, or completely unexpected?
Absolutely unexpected, Paul. Yeah, to start the day, I think pace I had in practice was not there. I was really struggling with the front end of the car, especially in the high speed stuff. And I think that was the same in qualifying. Did not qualify well, and it was just I didn't think the pace was going to be in it. I didn't have really a lot of time practicing this week. I should have had some more, but life kind of takes over, and you like.
Oh, indeed. Of course, we always want to get a bit more practice in, but you had to make do with the time you're able to get. And when it started off, of course, with a qualifying session where I think you'd be backing up the thought that perhaps with a bit more time, the lap could have come on through, but qualifying in the end saw you quite a way down the order. In fact, we just double check our notes with regards to your qualifying position, P21 on the grid, and having to make a lot of ground up in the first race.
Yeah, as I say, I think the pace in qualifying I could not get a decent lap together without getting an off track, so I needed to make sure I had something on the board. So yeah, it was the start of the sprint race wasn't too bad. I sort of taken my time through the first 3 corners, and then I think Joe Pinder had made a good start, and he was around the outside of us, and I think he lost the back end. By that point, I had nowhere to go, so I ended up with damage in the first half of the lap. So after that, it was kind of just damage limitation and see where I could get up to. And to be fair, I think finished P6 in silver, so I was quite happy to just recover to that, to be honest.
Oh, indeed. A great effort there to limit the damage after a difficult start, but fighting your way back up. And then in the feature race, it was almost as if everything was off the table in terms of any potential predictions from lap 1 to the very end. But we saw you very quickly seem to carve your way through.
Yeah, I think cars sort of fell by the wayside around me, to be honest. Sort of made a worse start in the feature than I did in the sprint, and again took my time and picked my way through, and then they all sort of kicked off with the silvers, and I think Aaron, my teammate, had problems ahead, and I just managed to squeeze my way through, and I think me and David got away from that group, and yeah, then it was like I was like trying to ask my team, where am I leading? I didn't know, and came round at like P10 in the race, and I thought I must be, because I wasn't sure where Luke Andrew was, which we know he's very fast. But yeah, so I think me and David got through that, and it was quite lucky from there, really.
Oh, indeed, but still, in making the run into lead and then having to hold on, the Silverstone circuit not easy in any car, but in these Porsche Cup cars, the 992, it does have a massive rear wing on it and also has some degree of downforce, but it looks as though out there you've almost got to have the car almost ready to oversteer at a moment's notice in order to get the most speed. Just take us through that sort of balance of the car around here. Is it constantly feeling a bit sketchy? Are you always on the limit?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, the setup we had, as I said, just there's not a lot of front end grip on it, so you really have to slow the car down to get any sort of exit. A couple of times through Maggots and Beckett's, I was really struggling, but I managed to sort of use the slow in, fast out approach, and it seemed to work.
Oh, indeed, and finding a way to balance the car in the end despite the lack of front end downforce on it, indeed the grip that came with it. And of course, going on to that final lap, it's always a bit of an emotional one to be leading and finding yourself there come the checkered flag. And well, it must have felt special crossing the line to pick up your first win of the season in class.
Yeah, absolutely. Over the moon, absolutely. I was hoping that Cameron could take the win and the gold as well, and we'd have a first in silver and first in gold for the brothers, but he wasn't quite to be there. But yeah, over the moon. I mean, I'm the older and slower brother, so it's quite nice to get a win under my belt.
Oh, that's absolutely brilliant. I'm sure Cameron is absolutely proud of you as well. And well, with that result, of course, a massive boon to your points haul in the championship. And we do have a 2 week, well, not a 2 week break. We have a week's break coming up, but when we return in 2 weeks' time, we head to Japan for the Suzuka Grand Prix circuit. How are you feeling for one of the more technical tracks on the calendar?
I think it'll be very similar to here. I think just with the amount of high-speed corners, it's going to be quite tricky. I think I'm going to try and get more practice now that we've got a week break. And just try and learn the track a bit better, because I know my way around Silverstone, but I've never done Suzuka and the Porsche Cup, so I'll have to get testing and see what we can do.
We do look forward to seeing what yourself and the team at Tresla Motorsport will be able to achieve in Japan. But just before we do let you go, Lewis, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast this evening?
Yeah, I think just the boys at Tresla Motorsport and UKSimRacing. I think we've worked hard this trying to improve ourselves. And Ashley England as well. He made us show up this week to watch us. Him and CLC Utilities have been helping out big time with getting us prepped for this year. So yeah, quite happy with that.
Well, it's great to hear so many individuals in the team all around you and the other individuals as part of Tresla Motorsport and at UKSimRacing. But with that, Lewis, congratulations once again on a great recovery drive in the first race of the day. And of course, your first win of the season in the feature. And we look forward to seeing how you get on in 2 weeks' time in Japan.
Thanks, Paul. Much appreciated.
Have a great evening.
Cheers.
So hearing there from Lewis Willesee, our silver class driver in the 44 for Tresla Motorsport, and well, what a day it has been. In fact, coming into tonight, in his own words, feeling as though there should have been a bit more time for practice and not quite on the pace, and that was reflected in qualifying with the P21 on the grid and one of the lowest qualifying times that was set in the session, but then very quickly after a difficult start, starting to turn things around in the sprint and recovering to a P16 class, P16 overall, albeit you could argue aided to a degree by a bit of lady luck by drivers falling off the circuit, but then again you've got to be in it to win it, and that does happen in motorsport whether luck's on your side or not. And then going into the feature race, again having to start from quite far back, P16 on the grid, but with all the batting into the opening few corners and a number of major names in the silver class falling, where it was up to Lewis Willesee and a couple of his peers, including Steve Kershaw, Jack Ward and Alistair Hatcher, to try and rise up and through and try to keep one step ahead of the likes of Luke Andrews and Roxanne Marshall. And it was Lewis Willesee in particular who was the one to achieve it most and make sure he would be on the top step. And I think he's one to watch out for now, with the fact he'll be galvanised by this performance, and going into Japan in 2 weeks' time, he may feel as though the taste of the podium champagne is not to go away any time soon. But as he makes his way on around the outer stow in our replay pictures, and he's made his way away from the interview room, we now get ready for our final interview of the day, and we'll very shortly be hearing from Haroldas Jotautas in the gold class in what has been an absolutely brilliant day of racing for the Lithuanian, in the fact that he has enjoyed some of the most intense racing in the field over the course of both races, whether it be in the sprint or the feature, in between some of the biggest names, included, of course, Hammer and also Peregrina, but as he gets ready to join me. In fact, he does join me now. Haroldas, I can only imagine how exhausted you must be after the two races today. If there was a battle on circuit, you were in it at some point, and you weren't just in any old battle. You were battling Philipp Hammer, alternatively Alex Peregrina, the championship rivals, or you'd be battling the likes of Ryan Walker, alternatively Charles Phillips. You seem to have a lot of fun out on circuit.
Hi Paul. Yeah, for sure. Especially the second race. I was holding up someone, or trying, or sitting just behind someone, or going side by side, two wide or three wide, like most of the race.
Or indeed, it really breathes to life the potential for battles here at Silverstone. And well, you're the best example of it today, there's no question about it. But before we come on to the races in a bit more detail, qualifying, very interesting session. P3 on the grid, 3/10 of a Peregrina's second place time, and then a further half a second to Hammer's time. And of course, we rode on board with you during your second preparation lap. We caught the wrong lap, but still, a fast lap. Was there a bit more out there?
Yep. So I was a bit surprised. The times in practice were much better all over the grid. I was scared a little bit that some other guys, that I will be a little bit lower when I ended up. Yeah, so I'm happy with the result, but as I've mentioned to you, yeah, there was a little bit of mess up on my side. I did two preparation laps, which I would not have done if I have realized that I don't have enough time then for two fast laps. And it's just great that I did not miss my only fast lap. I was really surprised when the session cut off like the last third of my second fast lap.
Oh, goodness me. One unwelcome surprise, but still a good qualifying session. And then going into the sprint race, from the start, we saw a very strong launch off the line from you into turn one. It looked as though you were going for the move on Peregrina, and then it just all sort of unfolded in dramatic fashion in terms of a two-wide battle all the way onto the Wellington straight.
So at the sorry. At the start of the first race, yeah, I had a great start, jump from the line, and I was getting side by side with Alex, but then I think I turned it in a little bit too early, and he was not turning in yet, so I realized, oh no, I have no space, so I had to back out a little bit, which then put me just behind him, and for the first race, I was like happy with that position. I noticed early on that I'm missing some pace compared to two guys ahead, like Philip and Alex. Especially at I think it's like the section 10 to turn 10 to turn 14. I was struggling there a lot. So basically, I used that first race just to get that section down, to not lose like 3/10 every lap, because at first I was doing that. And also what surprised me was the pace of Corey Lazarus, right? At the start, like after the first few corners, we already had like a 3-second gap to other guys, and I was calm and thinking, okay, I'll finish here, no problem. And when I saw how fast Corey was, closing in, so yeah, it was a bit tense.
Oh, most definitely. But you managed to hold on to P2 at the end, despite the pressure being put on you by Corey Lazarus. And then going into the second race today in the feature, what would be a P7 start. And, well, goodness me, it was battles all the way from start to finish. And also some very close moments between yourself and Philipp Hammer.
Yeah, so the start of the second race was intense, but I was just trying to put the car where the space is. Don't go for any moves, but just like try not to lose any positions as well. Yeah, and Philip and Alex were sitting just behind me. I was trying to get past, I think it was Ryan ahead of me, and also, not to lose positions. So it was very tough. I think when both of those guys got ahead of me, and when someone happened to Philip, I'm not exactly sure what. Most likely a slowdown somewhere, but I just did not caught where he got that. But he let me through, and when we got like a second round, and yeah, he got me again.
Oh, goodness me. And of course, you're in a three-way fight for the gold title with Philipp Hammer and Alex Peregrina. And the results today are only going to bring you three closer together in the fact that we have 4 rounds remaining. I have to ask, what's your perspective on the championship, given how tight it is from race to race?
Honestly, I'll be happy with third. Because I think I'm just a bit like on average in on race pace, like a few tenths slower a lap. But on like actual 100% pace, I think we are able to put in laps much faster than me. Like I was holding up Alex, right, and when he got free, he was like doing laps second faster than me. So I think even though the standings are not showing that, they are faster than me. So what I'm trying to do is, race smart, try to bring home good results not by, not by pace, but by racing patiently. So yeah, I will be happy with third, but now I think it's the second round now that Alex is well, not having a best result. So maybe second is now possible as well.
Oh, indeed, you never know, and it does look as though second place may be coming your way. But of course, the story continues in Japan in 2 weeks' time. How are you feeling for the Suzuka Grand Prix circuit?
It's a great track. It's a great track. Not sure if it's a great track to race, but it probably is. But I very like it to just to hot lap. So I think I'll be coming in with a good preparation. Although next week is break week for the championship, but definitely not for most of us. Right, we will be doing Notch Live at 24 hours, so that that takes a toll as well. It will take a lot of practice, and then the race itself, it's very tiring. So not sure how much in the mood I will be for doing more laps for the next round.
Oh, indeed. And we wish you well in the official 24-hour race at the Nürburgring as hosted by iRacing Official. But at the same time, we look forward to seeing how you get on in Japan in 2 weeks' time. But just before we let you go, Haroldas, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast this evening?
Yeah, shout out to my team, which seems to be in the hibernation mode for the summer already, and I can get them out to race with me. So hopefully we can fix that. And of course, shout out to the guys racing here. Like it's one of the cleaner leagues that I've raced in, so it's great. Thanks to all of the competition, and shout out to you, Paul. Your commentary is amazing, like the best I've seen. Thanks for that.
Well, thank you, and we're glad to hear you're enjoying the racing week in, week out, and with all the competition that unfolds from lap to lap and quarter to quarter. But with that, Haroldas, it has been a pleasure to have you in the interview room as always. And well, hope you have a nice break week, albeit hope all the official racing goes well, and we'll see you in 2 weeks' time in Japan.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Have a great evening. So hearing there from Haroldas Jotautas, our gold class driver, who interesting to hear his perspective on the championship compared to how things played out today and where he sees himself fitting into that freeway battle between himself, Philipp Hammer and Alex Peregrina. In his own words, being the driver who on race pace is doing a couple of attempts of both of them, but once they start to separate into clear air or going for hot lap pace, he feels as though he's a bit slower by comparison in the relative delta, and Jotautas really just prided himself on a third place finish of the championship, but that P2 now looking highly possible, perhaps even the outside chance of a win, because Hammer will gain a little bit of championship momentum today, but at the same time Jotautas really taking the big results from the racing here, and Peregrina losing out some ground, but with 4 more rounds still to go, it is anybody's game, and indeed I think it is going to come down to fine margins, as we do see here on the replay pictures the second battle between Jotautas and Hammer making the way through Val and into the final chicane. But indeed, positive about all the racing from start to finish, enjoying the racing as well, and it's glad to hear. And will the over limit racing drive definitely drove within the limits today to pull off 2 great top 5 performances and particularly a second place in the sprint. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our post-round interviews with our selected drivers. You've just heard from Haroldas Jotautas in the gold class for over limit racing, the number 45 driver, and you previously heard from the silver class driver of Lewis Willisey for Tresla Motorsport in the 44, and we first heard from what was Corey Lazarus, the number 4 driver in the gold class for Blackout Motorsport New Zealand. And well, if any of these 3 drivers have caught your eye with regards to being your driver of the day, we'd like to remind you one more time, and so don't forget to vote for your driver of the day. Link available in the YouTube chat there. And well, the votes will close as of midnight tonight. And that is British Summer Time, BST, or Universal Coordinated Time +1, UTC +1. But thank you to the trio for joining me in the interview room once again. And congratulations to all of them for their brilliant performances today. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed today's show and you want to know more about the UK sim racing community in terms of the series we run, alternatively the individuals who make up the community, or everything in between, you can of course find out more about us by firstly checking out our official website, and that is the UK Sim Racing website at http, well in fact I'm not going to read out the entire coding beforehand, but you can imagine it is uksimracing.co.uk, and well, as we saw earlier in the broadcast today, all the latest details regarding our official series, whether it be the Porsche Cup, alternatively the GT3 League, all on display there, and the details of how you can sign up. Alternatively, if you don't want to go to our website, but you want to follow us on social media, you can of course follow us on Twitter, and that's at twitter.com/UKSimRacing_. We'd also like to take a brief moment to say a big thank you to our affiliates, who include of course Swello Meda Sim Racing Coaching, and what Swello Meda is of course the master or the creator of the Motor Racing Checklist, whereby his coaching can help take your sim racing driving to the next level. Whether you're looking to gain a 10th, improve your approach to the racing line, or develop your consistency, Swello Meda has a coaching course to meet your needs. Plus, with Swello been a multi-time champion of official iRacing series, including the 2021 PSCC, you know you are receiving coaching from the very best in the industry. We also have Race Anywhere, the provider of curated sim racing equipment, aimed to only stock products that represent excellent value for the sim racing community. Also Demon Tweaks, the provider of the most complete and innovative motorsport product range available worldwide, so no matter what your level of discipline, Demon Tweaks can help drive you to realise your motorsport ambitions. SimLab, the leading manufacturer of high quality sim racing related hardware. As a proud partner of Mercedes-AMG Petronas Esports, SimLab aims to enhance virtual racing experiences with uncompromising solutions that push the boundaries of esports, and with in-house engineering and production facilities which combine Dutch design and high-end craftsmanship, SimLab is the go-to brand for quality sim racing rigs. And lastly, Amazon, the company striving to be the Earth's most customer-centric company, the Earth's best employer, and the Earth's safest place to work through the provision of concepts pioneered by Amazon, including but not limited to Amazon Fire tablets, Amazon Fire TV, and Amazon Alexa. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, it's now, of course, the second mid-season break that is upon us, but we'll be back in 2 weeks' time on Thursday, the 18th of May, to resume the run into the conclusion, and it starts off with the penultimate pair of rounds in Japan at the infamous Suzuka circuit. Rounds 12 12 and 13 will be hosted there. And if Suzuka is synonymous with anything, it is synonymous with late championship drama. And with the battle in the gold class continue to rage on between Philipp Hammer, Haroldas Jotautas and Alex Peregrina. And in the silver class, it's the rivalry of Roxanne Marshall, Luke Andrews and Dale Bigadai. You can be sure that Suzuka is going to deliver even more drama after what has been a dramatic day at Silverstone today. Who will come away from Suzuka with the big score? We'll find out that and all more, plenty more in the end in 2 weeks' time. But until then, we've been UK Sim Racing. I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay smiling, stay positive, but most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.